The desert wind howls across the Iraqi sands, carrying whispers of a story older than the ruins it buries. Beneath the sun-bleached stones of ancient Sumer, where the first cities rose like miracles from the dust, lies a question that has haunted scholars, dreamers, and seekers for centuries. Who were the Anunnaki? In the myths of the world's earliest civilization, they are described as divine beings, gods who descended from the heavens to shape humanity's destiny. But what if the Sumerians weren't weaving tales of celestial deities? What if they were preserving memories of something far stranger, beings from another world? Teachers from beyond the stars whose knowledge seeded the foundations of civilization itself. Welcome to the mystery that begins our journey. Mr. H from Codex of the Lost, inviting you to close your eyes and drift into the enigma of the Anunnaki. Because in their story, we might find the key to a truth we've been trying to forget for 5,000 years. The Sumerians called them those who came down from heaven. The word Anunnaki breaks apart in their ancient tongue. Anu, the sky god, and Ki, the earth. Together, it suggests offspring of the sky, God upon the earth, or more provocatively, those of princely seed who descended. The texts are clear. They were not born among humanity, nor did they emerge from the rivers or mountains like the spirits of other cultures. They arrived. They came from above, bearing gifts of knowledge that transformed nomadic tribes into builders of cities, scribes of laws, and observers of the stars. But who were they really? Were they gods as the priests of Uruk claimed, their voices echoing in ziggurat shadows? Or were they something else, visitors perhaps, whose origins were lost in the translation of clay tablets pressed by hands long turned to dust? In 1849, Sir Austen Henry Layard stood in the ruins of Nineveh, unearthing the first fragments of Sumerian literature from beneath centuries of sand. Among the shattered tablets, he found the Enigmas, the Babylonian creation epic. Rooted in older Sumerian tales, the text spoke of the Anunnaki as divine architects, shaping the world with deliberate precision. They taught humanity to write, to calculate, to build canals that tamed the wild rivers. They delivered the myth, divine decrees or cosmic principles that governed everything from kingship to craftsmanship. Layard, brushing dirt from the cuneiform wedges, felt a chill as he read descriptions of beings who seemed less like mythic gods and more like instructors with a curriculum. The Enuma Elish didn't describe divine miracles but systematic processes. How to mix clay for tablets. How to align temples with the stars. How to organize societies with laws and hierarchies. It read like a manual, not a hymn. The mystery deepened as scholars like Dr. Samuel Noah Kramer decades later in 1956 pored over thousands of tablets in the University of Pennsylvania's basement archives. Kramer, a pioneer in Sumerology, translated texts that described the Anunnaki with unsettling specificity. In the myth Enki and the World Order, Enki, the god of wisdom, traveled from city to city, assigning roles with the precision of a project manager. To Eridu, he gave irrigation techniques, detailing the depth of canals and the spacing of water gates. To he delivered protocols for brick production, specifying ratios of clay to straw. To Nipper, he assigned astronomical observations with instructions for tracking Venus's 8-year cycle. Kramer's hands trembled as he realized these were not vague divine proclamations, but technical directives, as if Enki were a consultant dispatched to ensure a civilization ran smoothly. The Anunnaki didn't just inspire, they engineered. But what if this engineering wasn't divine? In the 1970s, a controversial figure named Zecharia Sitchin proposed a radical interpretation that sent ripples through both academic circles and fringe communities. Sitchin, studying the same texts as Kramer, argued that the Anunnaki were not gods, but extraterrestrial beings from a planet called Nibiru. orbiting beyond the known solar system. According to Sitchin, they arrived on Earth 450,000 years ago, seeking gold to stabilize their planet's atmosphere. They genetically engineered early humans to serve as laborers, then taught them the arts of civilization to ensure their survival. Sitchin pointed to the Atrahasis, a Sumerian flood myth, which describes the Anunnaki creating humans from clay mixed with divine essence. To Sitchin, this was no metaphoric, was a description of genetic manipulation, with clay representing organic material and divine essence, the DNA of an advanced species. Sitchin's theories were dismissed by mainstream scholars as speculative fiction, his translations criticized for inaccuracies. Yet, even his critics couldn't deny the precision of certain Sumerian artifacts that seemed to support his claims. Take the cylinder seal VA-243 discovered in the ruins of Akkad and catalogued at the VA's museum in Berlin. Dr. Janet Morrison, a curator at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in 2001, examined this small limestone seal under magnification and froze. At its center was a radiant star, unmistakably the Sun, surrounded by 11 spherical bodies in orbital positions. The arrangement bore an eerie resemblance to a heliocentric model of the solar system with planets varying in size. Jupiter large, Mercury small, and others clustered like inner planets. This was impossible. The Sumerians living in 2500 BCE were supposed to believe in a geocentric universe with Earth at the center and the Sun orbiting it. Yet here was a seal pressed into clay to mark ownership, depicting a solar system not formally mapped until Copernicus in 1543. Morrison's discovery wasn't isolated. Other tablets described celestial phenomena with chilling accuracy. The Venus tablet often sources tracked Venus's 584-day cycle with precision that modern astronomers use to date ancient chronologies. Another text catalogued as K2669 in the British Museum recorded Saturn's rings as handles and Jupiter's moons as family members, details barely visible without telescopes. How could a civilization without optical instruments describe such phenomena? Sitchin argued that the Anunnaki with advanced technology provided this knowledge, teaching Sumerians to read the stars in ways that defied their era's limitations. Mainstream scholars counted that these were lucky observations refined over centuries. But the absence of earlier, cruder astronomical records troubled Morrison. The Sumerian sky charts didn't evolve. They appeared fully formed, as if downloaded from a source that already understood celestial mechanics. The Anunnaki's role as teachers extended beyond astronomy. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of humanity's oldest stories, the hero consults Utnapishtim, a flood survivor blessed by the Anunnaki with immortality. Utnapishtim's tale mirrors the Atrahasis, where the Anunnaki decide to preserve humanity through a chosen survivor, Zusudra, who carries forward their knowledge after a cataclysmic flood. These myths don't describe gods creating from nothing but beings preserving something precious. Those cosmic principles included instructions for metallurgy, agriculture, and law, knowledge so specific it feels like a blueprint for civilization. Dr. Sarah Chin, a comparative religion scholar at Yale in 2010, noted that the Anunnaki's instructions read like technical manuals embedded in sacred narratives. Enki's directives for canal construction included measurements for water flow, angles for stability, and seasonal timing for maintenance. Ninma's medical texts detailed herbal remedies and surgical procedures with a precision that suggested clinical experience, not divine inspiration. Chen's research uncovered another layer of the mystery: the Anunnaki's consistency across time. From Sa to AD to Babylon, their roles remained stable. Enki always governed engineering and wisdom. Ninma oversaw medicine and human creation. Nabu managed writing and record-keeping. This wasn't the fluidity of evolving mythology. but the rigidity of a system designed to preserve knowledge unchanged. Chun began to wonder if the Anunnaki were a cultural memory of real instructors, perhaps a caste of advanced humans, or as Sitchin suggested, extraterrestrial visitors whose teachings were encoded in stories to survive the collapse of civilizations. The Sumerians themselves seemed aware of this preservation. Their word for writing sar also meant to place in order and to remember, as if their scribes knew they were safeguarding something that could not be lost. But why the obsession with preservation? The answer might lie in the Sumerian flood myths which echo across culture. Zudra Noah manual stories of a deluge that nearly erased humanity. Archaeological evidence supports a localized flood around 2900 BCE with thick silt layers at Shuruppak and Kish, marking a cultural disruption. Dr. John Brennan, an archaeologist at Cambridge in 2015, argued that these myths preserved memories of a real catastrophe that reset Sumerian society. The Anunnaki in these stories chose survivors to carry forward the myth, ensuring civilization could be rebuilt. But rebuilt from what? Brennan found tablets describing a world before the flood. More advanced, more connected, as if the Sumerians were reconstructing a lost golden age. The Atraces hints at the Anunnaki's regret after the flood, promising never to destroy humanity so completely again. This wasn't divine remorse, was a policy shift, as if they had learned that total erasure costs too much knowledge. The extraterrestrial hypothesis gains traction when we consider the Sumerians' sudden technological leaps. Their base 60 mathematics still used in our clocks and GPS systems appeared without precursor, as if designed for applications they couldn't have imagined. Dr. Elenina Robson, studying tablet YBC 7-289 at Oxford in 2005, found calculations of square roots and the Pythagorean theorem 1,000 years before Pythagoras. The system's elegance suggested minds that understood theoretical mathematics, not just practical counting. Similarly, their irrigation systems with locks and gates required engineering knowledge that should have taken centuries to develop. Yet the archaeological record shows no trial and error phase, just perfection from the start. Could the Anunnaki have been advanced beings who jump-started Sumerian civilization with pre-existing knowledge? Sitchin's critics argue that his Nibiru theory lacks evidence, and mainstream scholars like Dr. Irving Finkel, a cuneiform expert at the British Museum, dismiss extraterrestrial claims as fantasy. Finkel points to the Sumerians' own ingenuity, suggesting their observations were refined over generations. But even Finkel admitted in a 2018 lecture that the sudden appearance of cuneiform with its complex grammar and standardized symbols feels like an anomaly. No earlier writing systems bridged the gap to cuneiform sophistication. The Sumerians themselves claimed the Anunnaki taught them to write, not that they invented it. Finkel, holding a tablet in the museum's climate-controlled vault, felt the weight of a silence that seemed to hide something, perhaps a truth too strange for academia to embrace. Another clue lies in the Sumerian art depicting the Anunnaki. Unlike the abstract deities of later cultures, their images are detailed, almost portrait-like. Cylinder seals show them in regal attire, holding tools or orbs, standing beside what appear to be mechanical devices. One seal, catalogued as BM23 for 56, depicts an Anunnaki figure with a winged object that resembles a spacecraft to some interpreters. Mainstream scholars call it a symbolic sun disk. But the specificity, winged shapes, layered components, feels technical, not decorative. Dr. Amanda Stelza at the University of Chicago in 2012 noted that these depictions align with myths describing the Anunnaki arriving in sky chariots. Were these poetic metaphors, or were the Sumerians documenting something they witnessed? The global parallels add fuel to the mystery. Cultures worldwide tell of sky beings delivering knowledge. The Egyptian god Thoth taught writing and astronomy. The Mayan Cuchulainn brought laws and calendars. The Indian Vedas describe Vimanas, flying machines piloted by divine beings. These stories, separated by oceans and millennia, share eerie similarities, advanced knowledge, sudden civilizational leaps, and teachers from above. Could they reflect a shared memory of contact with a single source? The Sumerians, as the earliest to record such tales, might hold the original account, preserved in clay while other cultures passed it through oral tradition. But if the Anunnaki were extraterrestrial, why did they leave? The myths offer clues. The Enuma Elish describes the Anunnaki withdrawing after establishing humanity's systems as if their mission was complete. The Atrahasis suggests they grew weary of humanity's flaws, choosing to preserve only what was essential through chosen survivors. Dr. Margaret Chin, reflecting on these texts in 2020, proposed that the Anunnaki might have been a transient presence, leaving behind a self-sustaining civilization. Their departure could explain the Sumerians' obsession with preservation ziggurats built to track stars, tablets buried in desert vaults, myths encoded with technical details. They feared losing what their teachers had given them. The final piece of the puzzle lies in the silence of the archaeological record. Beneath Suma's cities, there are no primitive precursors, no failed experiments. The deepest layers are empty, as if someone swept away the evidence of what came before. Dr. Klaus Schmidt, excavating Bekleet in 2019, found a similar absence beneath its 11,000-year-old stones. The site, older than agriculture, suggests a sophisticated culture that vanished without a trace. Could it be a remnant of the Anunnaki's influence? A staging ground before they reached Suma. The deliberate burial of Gobisi, covered in earth around 8,000 B.C., mirrors the Sumerian impulse to hide knowledge for future rediscovery. As the desert wind fades and the stars emerge over Mesopotamia, the question lingers like a shadow across the ruins. Were the Anunnaki gods, their stories born of human imagination? Or were they something more, visitors who left their mark in clay and stone, their legacy encoded in the foundations of our world? The tablets don't lie, but they don't confess either. They sit in museum vaults, their cuneiform wedges, whispering of a time when humanity looked to the skies and saw not just stars, but teachers. And maybe, just maybe, those teachers are still out there watching us rebuild from their blueprints, waiting for us to remember what we were never supposed to forget. Close your eyes, listeners of Codex of the Lost, and let the mystery of the Anunnaki carry you into the night, where the truth might be hidden in the silence between the stars. The sun rises slowly over the arid hills of southeastern Turkey, casting long shadows across a landscape that has held its secrets for 11 millennia. Beneath a seemingly ordinary mound known to local shepherds as Göbekli lies a discovery that shatters everything we thought we knew about the dawn of human civilization. Uncovered in 1994 by Dr. Klaus Schmidt, this site is no mere collection of stones, is a monumental complex of towering pillars intricately carved and precisely arranged, built by a people who were supposed to be simple hunter-gatherers. Yet the sophistication of Göbekli, dated to 9,600 B.C., predates agriculture, cities, and even the invention of the wheel. It stands as a silent witness to a civilization that seems to have vanished without a trace, leaving behind questions that echo through the ages. Dr. Klaus Schmidt first glimpsed the hill in 1994 while driving through the dusty plains near Shanlur. Local shepherds had long known of strange stones that occasionally surfaced, their edges too smooth to be natural. Schmidt, a German archaeologist with a passion for Neolithic sites, decided to investigate what others had dismissed as insignificant. When his team began digging, they uncovered something impossible. Massive T-shaped limestone pillars, some standing 18-foot tall and weighing up to 20 tons, arranged in circles like a prehistoric Stonehenge. Radiocarbon dating placed their construction at 9,600 B.C., making Göbekli older than the pyramids, older than Sumer's first cities, older than agriculture itself. Schmidt stood among the stones, his breath catching as he realized he was looking at the oldest monumental architecture known to humanity. But who built it and why? The discovery turned every model of civilizational development upside down, suggesting that complex societies might have existed long before we thought possible. The pillars of Göbekli are not crude stacks of rock. They are masterworks of engineering, quarried from bedrock with stone tools, transported across uneven terrain without wheels or beasts of burden, and erected with a precision that rivals modern construction. Each T-shaped monolith, shaped to resemble a stylized human figure, stands upright in shallow sockets, their bases aligned with a mathematical accuracy that suggests a deep understanding of structural engineering. Dr. Schmidt traced his fingers along the carvings that adorn these stones: foxes, vultures, snakes, wild boars, and abstract symbols that seem to follow a systematic pattern. The artistry is breathtaking, with reliefs so detailed they imply a culture capable of symbolic thinking far beyond what hunter-gatherers were supposed to achieve. The figures wear belts and loincloths, their arms folded in a gesture that feels deliberate, almost ritualistic. Were these carvings mere decoration? Or were they encoding a message meant to outlast the people who carved them? The mystery deepened as Schmidt's team excavated multiple stone circles, each one revealing refinements in technique and complexity. The site wasn't built in a single burst, but over centuries, with newer circles showing more elaborate carvings and larger pillars. Yet, there was no evidence of permanent settlements nearby. No houses, no hearths, no signs of the agricultural infrastructure that should have supported such a massive undertaking. The builders of Göbekli appeared out of nowhere, constructed a complex that required thousands of laborers and decades of effort, then vanished back into the landscape. Schmidt, standing in the excavation pit in 2019, felt a chill as he considered the implications. This wasn't the work of a primitive tribe stumbling into architecture. It was the product of a society with institutional knowledge capable of organizing large-scale projects and preserving their plans across generations. But where were the traces of that society? The astronomical alignments of Göbekli added another layer to the enigma. Several of the stone circles are oriented to track the rising of Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, while others align with solstices and equinoxes. Dr. Martin Swatman, a researcher at the University of Edinburgh in 2017, analyzed the carvings and proposed that they might represent a prehistoric star map with symbols corresponding to constellations visible 11,000 years ago. One pillar, known as the Vulture Stone, depicts a bird holding an orb aligned with the constellation Scorpio as it appeared during the Younger Dryas period, a time of climatic upheaval around 10,800 B.C. The precision of these alignments suggests that the builders possessed systematic knowledge of celestial mechanics, a science we associate with later civilizations like Sumer or Egypt. How did hunter-gatherers, supposedly focused on survival, develop such sophisticated astronomy? And why did they pour their resources into building a monument to the stars? The carvings themselves hint at a deeper purpose. The animalians, scorpions, cranes, not random, but seem to follow a narrative logic, perhaps encoding myths or astronomical events. Dr. Schmidt noted a recurring motif of human-like figures, their features stylized but anatomically precise, as if carved from direct observation. Some researchers like Dr. Andrew Collins in 2014 suggested these figures might represent the builders' ancestors, perhaps their teachers, beings revered as divine or otherworldly. The Sumerian myths of the Anunnaki, those who came down from heaven, echo eerily here. Could Göbekli be a physical link to the same teachers who later shaped Sumer? The site's age places it millennia before Sumer's cities. Yet its sophistication suggests a continuity of knowledge that defies the archaeological record. Perhaps the most unsettling discovery was the site's deliberate burial around 8000 B.C. The builders of Bekleet covered their creation with tons of earth and stone, sealing it beneath the hill where it lay hidden for 8000 years. This wasn't abandonment. It was preservation. Dr. Schmidt, sifting through the layers of debris in 2019, realized that the burial was meticulous with stones placed to protect the pillars rather than destroy them. Why hide such a monumental achievement? The answer might lie in the Sumerian impulse to preserve knowledge seen in their buried tablets and flood myths. The builders of Bekleet, like the Sumerians millennia later, seemed to understand the fragility of human memory. They buried their temple as a time capsule, trusting that future generations would uncover it when they were ready to understand its message. But what was that message and who was it meant for? The absence of a developmental phase at Bekleet is what troubles archaeologists most. Every other ancient site shows a progression: crude early structures giving way to refined ones, simple tools evolving into complex technology. But Göbekli appears fully formed with no primitive precursors. Dr. Ian Hodder, an archaeologist at Stanford in 2018, noted that the site challenges the standard narrative that agriculture enabled complex societies. Instead, Besseep suggests that monumental architecture might have driven the development of agriculture as communities gathered to build and maintain the site, necessitating food surplus and social organization. But this raises a deeper question. How did a pre-agricultural society acquire the knowledge to plan and execute such a project? Were they taught by a culture we've yet to discover? One that left no other traces. The global parallels amplify the mystery. Across the world, other megalithic sites, Stonehenge, the Maltese temples, the Yunani monument in Japan share features with Bekleet. Massive stones, astronomical alignments, and an absence of clear precursors. Dr. Robert Shaw, a geologist at Boston University in 2015, proposed that these sites might be remnants of a global network of advanced cultures connected by trade or knowledge exchange before recorded history. The Sumerian myths of the Anunnaki with their tales of sky teachers resonate with similar stories in Egypt where Thoth delivered writing or in Mesoamerica where Quetzalcoatl taught astronomy. Could Göbekli be a node in this lost network? A place where knowledge was encoded in stone to survive a cataclysm we can only glimpse in myths. The Younger Dust period around 10,800 B.C. offers a clue. This era of sudden climate change marked by floods and cold snaps may have disrupted early human societies. Dr. Swedman's analysis of Bekleet's carvings suggests they record a comet impact around this time, an event that could have triggered the climatic upheaval. The vulture stone might depict this catastrophe with symbols representing a cosmic event that reshaped the world. The Sumerian flood myths appearing millennia later could be an echo of this memory preserved through oral traditions until cuneiform captured them in clay. If Göbekli's builders survived such a disaster, their decision to bury the site might reflect a fear of another collapse, a determination to protect their knowledge for a future they couldn't guarantee. The carvings also hint at a spiritual or ritual purpose. The animals and humanoid figures suggest a cosmology, a way of understanding the universe that integrated the natural and celestial worlds. Dr. Ida Ödevin, a Turkish archaeologist in 2020, proposed that Göbekli was a ceremonial center where rituals reinforced social bonds and preserved knowledge through performance. The pillars with their human-like forms might represent ancestors or deities. Perhaps even the Anunnaki figures later revered by Sumerians. But the absence of domestic remains no homes. No tools for daily life suggests that Bekleet wasn't a city but a sanctuary, a place where knowledge was safeguarded through sacred acts. This aligns with the Sumerian practice of embedding technical instructions in myths, as if both cultures understood that stories and stones outlast empires. The silence of Bekleet is deafening. For 8000 years, It lay hidden while civilizations rose and fell. Sumer built its ziggurats. Egypt raised its pyramids. Rome conquered the Mediterranean. Yet none knew of the hill in Turkey that predated them all. Dr. Schmidt, standing among the pillars in his final excavation season, felt the weight of that silence. The site was a message carved with a purpose we can't fully decipher. Its builders knew something about the fragility of human achievement, the ease with which knowledge can be lost. They built Göbekli to endure not just as a temple but as a library in stone encoding wisdom in symbols and alignments that could survive millennia. What haunts modern researchers is the possibility that Göbekli isn't unique. Other sites like Karahipi, also in Turkey and dated to a similar period, show comparable sophistication. Dr. Nikmi Karu, excavating Karahan in 2021, found smaller T-shaped pillars and enclosures suggesting a regional tradition of monumental construction. If multiple sites existed, what else lies buried beneath the Earth's surface, waiting to rewrite our history? The Sumerians, appearing 6,000 years later, share Göbeklit's obsession with preservation, tablets buried in vaults, ziggurats aligned with stars, myths of teachers from the sky. Could Sumer have been a continuation of this tradition? A second attempt to rebuild what Göbeklit's builders lost. As the stars wheel above the Turkish hills, Göbekli stands as a challenge to everything we believe about our origins. It whispers of a civilization that knew how to carve stone and read the heavens before humanity was supposed to dream of such things. Its pillars, silent but eloquent, suggest a world where knowledge was a sacred trust, buried against the day when we might forget. Listeners of Codex of the Lost, let the enigma of Göbekli carry you into the night. Imagine the hands that shaped these stones, the minds that aligned them with the stars, and the truth they hid beneath the earth. Because somewhere in that ancient silence, a forgotten civilization is waiting to be remembered. This message carved in stone, calling us to uncover what we were never supposed to lose. The Iraqi desert stretches endlessly under a merciless sun, its sands hiding secrets older than memory itself. In the cradle of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, where humanity's first cities rose like beacons from the dust, a mystery pulses beneath the ruins. Around 3,200 B.C., the Sumerian civilization appeared not as a gradual flowering of human ingenuity, but as a sudden explosion of sophistication that defies every rule of how civilizations are supposed to begin. Cities with engineered streets, writing with complex grammar, mathematics that still governs our clocks. These were not the stumbling steps of a people learning to build a society. They were the confident strides of a culture that seemed to know exactly what it was doing, as if following a blueprint drawn by hands no longer visible. In 1922, Dr. Charles Leonard Woolley stood in a trench at his boots sinking into the sun-warmed earth. As one of Britain's foremost archaeologists, Woolley had spent years excavating the remains of ancient Mesopotamia, expecting to find the gradual layers of humanity's first attempts at civilization: crude pottery, collapsed walls, the archaeological poetry of trial and error. But what he uncovered was something else entirely. 6 feet beneath the surface, where he anticipated scattered bones and primitive tools, he found perfection. Streets laid out in precise grids, their angles so exact they could have been drawn with a modern compass. Drainage systems engineered with mathematical precision, channeling water through clay pipes that still functioned after 4 millennia. Walls that stretched for hundreds of yards, their foundations cut deep into bedrock with a confidence that spoke of builders who had never known failure. Woolley held a clay tablet in his hands, its cuneiform wedges cataloging grain shipments and livestock with the efficiency of a modern spreadsheet. This was supposed to be one of humanity's first cities. Yet, it looked like the work of a culture that had been practicing for centuries. The shock was not an isolated discovery. Across the Mesopotamian plain from Uruk to Eridu to Nippur, archaeologists uncovered cities that seemed to spring into existence fully formed. Uruk, a metropolis that housed nearly 80,000 people by 200 B.C., boasted specialized districts for craftsmen, merchants, and priests. Monumental ziggurats rose from its center, their stepped sides climbing toward the sky with an architectural audacity that should have taken generations to refine. Administrative archives recorded legal proceedings so complex they rivaled modern court systems. Schools trained young scribes in standardized curricula, their clay tablets filled with mathematical tables and literary compositions. Workshops produced goods with industrial-level quality control, their specifications so precise they suggested a mastery of production techniques. Woolley, sketching these finds in his tent by lamplight, felt a growing unease. Civilizations don't emerge like this. They stumble. They falter. They leave behind the debris of their mistakes. But Suma's earliest layers showed no such debris. A blueprint executed with uncanny precision. The absence of a developmental phase is what haunts archaeologists most. Every other ancient culture leaves a trail of learning in the earth. In Egypt, pre-dynastic villages evolve into the unified kingdom over centuries, with crude mud huts giving way to stone temples. In China, Neolithic settlements gradually develop into the Shang dynasty, their pottery and tools showing steady improvement. Even earlier Mesopotamian cultures like the Ubaid show a slow progression from scattered hamlets to larger communities. But Suma breaks this pattern. Its cities appear with sophisticated infrastructure from the start, as if someone had pressed a switch and activated a fully designed society. Dr. Harriet Crawford, an expert on Sumerian archaeology at Cambridge in 1985, noted that the earliest layers at Uro contain irrigation channels with locks and gates engineered to distribute water across vast fields. These weren't experimental ditches, but systems that required advanced hydraulic knowledge. Where were the failed attempts, the collapsed canals, the archaeological evidence of a culture learning to manage water? The tablets Woolley unearthed deepened the mystery. One catalogued as 927 to 16 recorded tax records in neat columns detailing grain allocations with a bureaucratic efficiency that wouldn't be out of place in a modern office. The cuneiform script was not a collection of tentative scratches, but a standardized system with grammatical rules and a vocabulary capable of expressing complex legal and mathematical concepts. Dr. Samuel Noah Kramer, studying similar tablets in 1956, described the script as surgically clean, showing no signs of the evolutionary debris expected in a new writing system. Languages typically begin with grunts and gestures evolving into words and then grammar over generations. Writing systems leave even clearer traces of trial and error, crude pictographs becoming abstract symbols, simple marks growing into syllabic scripts. But Suma's cuneiform appeared fully formed, as if its scribes were following a manual they hadn't written themselves. Kramer, in the dim archives of the University of Pennsylvania, felt a chill as he realized that humanity's oldest writing system showed no signs of being young. The mathematics of Sumer tells a similar story. Their base 60 system, still used in our division of hours, minutes, and degrees, was not a practical counting method developed from tallying sheep. It was a theoretical framework capable of handling complex fractions and large numbers with an elegance that modern mathematicians admire. Dr. Elenina Robson, examining tablet YBC 7-289 at Oxford in 2005, found annotations demonstrating the Pythagorean theorem and square root calculations 1,000 years before Pythagoras. The system's design was so perfect for astronomical and geometric applications that it suggests minds that understood abstract principles long before the Renaissance rediscovered them. Robson, staring at the tablet's precise wedges, wondered why base 60. Most numerical systems arise from human anatomy, base 10 from fingers, base 20 from fingers and toes. Base 60 with its 12 devices feels engineered for purposes beyond the Sumerians' immediate needs, as if inherited from a source that already knew its applications. The astronomical knowledge of Sumer is equally perplexing. Their observers tracked planetary movements with an accuracy that seems impossible without instruments. They knew Venus was a single planet, whether it appeared as the morning or evening star, a realization that eluded the Greeks until the 6th century B.C. They predicted eclipses and calculated celestial cycles with mathematical precision as seen in the Venus tablet of Ammisaduqa. Dr. Hermann Hunger, studying these records in Vienna in 1998, found that Sumerian calculations of the synodic month 29 days 12 hours 44 minutes and 3 seconds differed from modern measurements by less than half a second. This precision achieved with water clocks and naked eye observation suggests a knowledge base that should have taken centuries to accumulate. Yet the earliest Sumerian astronomical texts show no crude precursors. No tentative observations refined over time. They begin with mastery as if someone had handed them a star chart and said, "Build your world around this." The ziggurats, those towering stepped pyramids, embody this sudden sophistication. Dr. Margaret Whitney, standing at the base of the ziggurat in 2010, noted its precise cardinal alignment with corners pointing north, south, east, and west. The structure's staircases faced specific celestial rising points, and its proportions followed geometric ratios that encoded astronomical cycles. These were not random temples, but instruments of observation built to track the heavens with a precision that accounted for axial precession of phenomenon so subtle it requires centuries of data to detect. Whitney's surveys revealed that ziggurats across Sumer followed the same design, as if every city received the same architectural plans. The repetition spanning centuries and cities suggests a cultural obsession with fidelity, as if the builders feared deviating from a pattern they couldn't explain. The Sumerian myths offer clues to this sudden emergence. Their creation stories don't describe a gradual rise from savagery, but a deliberate transfer of knowledge. The Anunnaki, those who came down from heaven, are portrayed as teachers delivering the cosmic principles that included writing, mathematics, and engineering. Dr. Sarah Chun, analyzing Enki and the world order at Yale in 2015, found that Enki's instructions were startlingly specific. Canal depths, brick ratios, legal protocols. This wasn't mythology, but a curriculum encoded in stories to ensure its survival. Chun wondered if the Sumerians were preserving memories of real instructors, perhaps an advanced human culture, or something stranger whose knowledge they inherited but didn't fully understand. The word may itself, meaning divine decrees or cosmic laws, suggests something recovered, not invented, as if Sumer was rebuilding from fragments of a lost whole. The archaeological silence beneath Sumer's cities is perhaps the most troubling clue. In the deepest layers where we expect to find the ancestors of their civilization crude tools, early settlements, there is nothing. Not the natural emptiness of uninhabited places, but a deliberate absence, as if someone had swept the record clean. Dr. John Brennan, excavating at Eridu in 2018, described it as walking into a house where the family photos had been removed, leaving only faint outlines on the walls. The Sumerians themselves seemed aware of this void. Their myths speak of a world before the flood, a time of greater knowledge that was nearly lost. The Atresis describes Zeus Sudra, a survivor chosen to preserve the me through a deluge that reset civilization. Brennan, sifting through flood layers dated to 900 B.C., found evidence of a cultural disruption. Sophisticated settlements replaced by simpler ones. Yet the Sumerians who rebuilt afterward wielded knowledge far beyond what survivors should possess, as if they were working from a partial blueprint. This absence of precursors raises a chilling possibility. What if Sumer wasn't humanity's first civilization, but its first reconstruction? The Ubaid culture, predating Sumer by centuries, shows gradual development, but its villages are modest compared to Sumer's sudden urban explosion. Could Sumer have inherited its systems from a culture that vanished, leaving only myths and buried tablets? The parallels with Göbekli 6,000 years earlier are striking. That Turkish site with its carved pillars and astronomical alignments suggests a pre-agricultural society with advanced knowledge buried deliberately to preserve it. Dr. Klaus Schmidt, reflecting on Göbekli in 2019, wondered if its builders were the Sumerians' distant predecessors. Their knowledge passed down through oral traditions until cuneiform could capture it. The Sumerians' obsession with preservation tablets buried in vaults. Ziggurats built to last millennia mirrors this earlier act of burial, as if both cultures feared the same fate. Oblivion. The global context deepens the mystery. Other ancient civilizations like Egypt and the Indus Valley show developmental phases. But Sumer stands alone in its abruptness. Yet their myths echo Sumer's tales of sky teachers. Thoth in Egypt, the Apkallu in Mesopotamia, the Seven Sages in India. These stories, separated by vast distances, suggest a shared memory of knowledge delivered from above. Dr. Amanda Stelza, studying comparative mythology in Chicago in 2020, noted that these teacher figures often arrive after a catastrophe as if tasked with rebuilding. Could Sumer have been the first to record this memory in writing, preserving a truth that other cultures kept only in song and story? The Enuma Elish describes the Anunnaki establishing order from chaos, not creating but restoring. This language of reconstruction feels like a confession, as if the Sumerians knew they were not inventors but inheritors. The implications are staggering. If Sumer emerged from a lost source, how much of human history lies buried beneath our assumptions? The Sumerians built cities, wrote laws, and mapped the stars with a confidence that suggests they were following instructions. But whose? The silence of the archaeological record offers no answers, only questions that linger like the desert wind. Dr. Woolley, standing in ruins, felt the weight of that silencer. Deliberate quiet, as if the past had been erased to hide something too vast to comprehend. The Sumerians left us their cities, their tablets, their myths, but also a warning. Knowledge is fragile and civilizations can vanish, leaving only echoes of what they knew. Imagine the hands that laid those first stones, the minds that wrote those first words, and the truth they buried in the sand. Because somewhere in that silence, a forgotten chapter of humanity waits to be uncovered, whispering that we may be rebuilding a world we've already lost. The air in the basement archives of the University of Pennsylvania is cool and still, heavy with the scent of ancient clay. Rows of shelves stretch into the shadows, cradling thousands of tablets inscribed with wedge-shaped marks that whisper secrets from a world long gone. These are the cuneiform tablets of Sumer, humanity's first attempt at written communication, pressed into wet clay around 200 B.C. But as Dr. Samuel Noah Kramer stood in this subterranean vault in 1956, his fingers tracing the precise incisions of a tablet catalogued as 1927-18, he felt a shiver that wasn't from the chill. The script before him wasn't the crude scribbles of a civilization learning to write. It was a masterpiece, a fully formed system of grammar, syntax, and vocabulary that seemed to emerge from nowhere. The Sumerians didn't invent writing as much as they inherited it, as if their cuneiform was not a new creation, but a backup drive, preserving knowledge from a source lost to time. Kramer, a pioneer in Sumerology, had spent decades deciphering these tablets, coaxing meaning from their wedge-shaped marks. Each tablet was a window into the Sumerian world tax records, legal contracts, hymns, and mathematical tables, all written with a precision that defied explanation. The tablet in his hands recorded a grain transaction between merchants in ancient. Its columns organized with bureaucratic efficiency, its language dense with technical terms and legal clauses. The cuneiform script, named for the Latin cuneus meaning wedge, was not a tentative experiment but a sophisticated technology for capturing human thought. Its symbols pressed into clay with a reed stylus followed grammatical rules so complex they could rival a modern linguistics textbook. Kramer set the tablet down, his heart racing. How does a civilization invent perfection on its first try? The question gnawed at him, growing louder with each tablet he translated, whispering that cuneiform wasn't humanity's first writing system. It was its first attempt to save something far older. The conventional story of writing's origin is neat and logical, a tale told in every archaeology classroom. Around 200 B.C., Sumerian merchants faced with increasingly complex trade needed to track transactions. Simple pictographs representing objects like grain or cattle evolved into abstract symbols, then into sounds, and finally into a full writing system. It's a tidy narrative, suggesting a gradual progression from crude marks to sophisticated script. But the archaeological record tells a different story. Dr. Denise Schmant-Besserat, studying Mesopotamian artifacts in the 1970s, found early clay tokens used for counting. But these were sporadic, inconsistent, and bore no clear developmental link to cuneiform's complexity. The earliest cuneiform tablets, like those from Uruk, aren't primitive scratches, they're standardized records complete with mathematical calculations, legal terminology, and narrative poetry. Kramer, pacing the archive's dimly lit corridors, saw no evolutionary debris, no failed experiments, no transitional forms. Cuneiform appeared fully realized, as if someone had downloaded an entire linguistic operating system into Sumerian consciousness. The sophistication of cuneiform is staggering. The script could express everything from mundane accounting to cosmic mythology. Its symbols adaptable to multiple languages: Sumerian, Akkadian, Hittite. Dr. Irving Finkel, a cuneiform expert at the British Museum in 2018, described it as a universal technology capable of recording complex ideas with a clarity that survived millennia. One tablet, catalogued as BM 45-793, contained a legal dispute over water rights in Lagash. The syntax flawless, its vocabulary precise enough to handle negotiations involving multiple parties and standardized measurements. Another, from the Aduba Sumerian tablet houses or schools, showed students memorizing thousands of lines of text from multiplication tables to religious hymns. These weren't exercises in experimentation, but in preservation, as if the scribes were tasked with safeguarding a system they didn't create. Finkel, holding a tablet in the museum's vault, felt a chill. The script's elegance suggested a confidence born of experience, not invention. The Sumerians themselves seemed to know their writing was not their own. Their myths describe Kunea as a gift from the Anunnaki, those who came down from heaven. In the Enki and the world order, the god Enki bestows writing as part of the cosmic principles that govern civilization. The word s, meaning to write, also carries connotations of to place in order and to remember, as if writing was a tool for preserving something sacred. Dr. Sarah Chin, a comparative religion scholar at Yale in 2015, noted that these myths don't portray writing as an invention, but as a recovery, a restoration of knowledge nearly lost. The Enuma Elish describes Enki teaching scribes to press their style into clay with care, as if the act was a ritual to prevent forgetting. Chun, poring over translations, began to see cuneiform as a cultural immune system designed to protect essential information through the chaos of time. This idea of preservation takes on new weight when we consider the tablet's physical form. Clay baked or sun-dried is one of the most durable mediums known to humanity. Unlike papyrus or parchment, which decay, or digital files, which require technology, clay tablets can survive millennia buried in desert sand. Dr. Amanda Stelza, studying Sumerian literature at the University of Chicago in 2020, marveled at the foresight of this choice. The Sumerians created redundant copies of their texts, distributing them across cities like Uruk, Nippur, and Eridu, when the royal library of Ashurbanipal burned in 612 B.C. The flames didn't destroy the tablets. They baked them, preserving works like the Epic of Gilgamesh, like pottery in a kiln. Stelza, examining fragments in the Oriental Institute, realized that this durability was no accident. The Sumerians understood the fragility of knowledge, building a system to outlast empires, floods, and fires. But what were they so desperate to preserve? The content of the tablets offers clues beyond administrative records. Cuneiform captured mathematical treatises, astronomical observations, and technical manuals. One tablet catalogued as YBC 7:289 contains a geometric diagram with calculations of the Pythagorean theorem 1,000 years before Pythagoras. Another from Nipper details herbal remedies and surgical procedures reflecting a medical knowledge that rivals later Greek texts. Dr. Eleanor Robson, analyzing these tablets at Oxford in 2005, found that Sumerian scribes used cuneiform to encode complex numerical systems, including base 60 mathematics that underpins our modern clocks and GPS. These weren't the rough notes of a culture learning to calculate. They were the polished records of a system already perfected. Robson, staring at the tablet's precise wedges, wondered if the Sumerians were transcribing knowledge they had been taught, not discovered. The absence of earlier writing systems deepens the mystery. In other cultures, writing evolves gradually. Egypt's hieroglyphs trace back to simpler pictographs. China's oracle bones show a progression from basic marks. But beneath Suma's earliest tablets, there is nothing. No crude prototypes. No experimental symbols. Dr. John Brennan, excavating at Eridu in 2018, described the deepest layers as surgically clean, as if someone had erased the evidence of cuneiform's origins. This absence mirrors the broader silence beneath Suma's cities, where no primitive settlements or failed experiments precede their urban sophistication. Brennan, sifting through the sand, felt as if he was standing in a house where the blueprints had been removed, leaving only the finished structure. The Sumerians' own myths hint at this erasure, describing a world before the flood, a time of greater knowledge that was nearly lost, preserved only through the efforts of survivors like Zusudra. The flood myths found in texts like the Atrahasis suggest that cuneiform was part of a deliberate effort to safeguard knowledge through catastrophe. The Anunnaki in these stories select Zusra to carry the myth principles of civilization through a deluge that resets the world. Archaeological evidence supports a localized flood around 2900 B.C.E. with silt layers at Shuruppak and Kish marking a cultural disruption. Dr. Margaret Whitney, studying these layers in 2010, noted that the Sumerians who rebuilt afterward wielded knowledge far beyond what survivors of a catastrophe should possess. Their tablets buried in vaults beneath ziggurats seemed designed to endure such disasters, as if the scribes knew their civilization could fall. Whitney, standing in the ruins of, felt the weight of their foresight. A culture that wrote not to create but to prevent loss. The global parallels add another layer to the enigma. Other ancient cultures developed writing systems, but none match cuneiform's sudden sophistication. Egypt's hieroglyphs, appearing centuries later, show a clear evolution from pictographs. The Indus Valley script, still undeciphered, lacks the complexity of cuneiform's grammar. Yet, Sumerian myths share themes with these culture stitches from the sky. Knowledge delivered after a great flood. Dr. Andrew Collins, studying comparative mythology in 2014, proposed that these stories might reflect a shared memory of a lost source, a civilization that seeded writing across the ancient world. The Sumerians, as the first to record these tales in cuneiform, may have preserved the clearest echo of this source, their tablets acting as a backup drive for a knowledge system that predates recorded history. The technical precision of cuneiform tablets suggests a purpose beyond communication. Many contain what appear to be encoded instructions. A tablet from Lagash catalogued as BM23 456 describes the construction of a canal specifying angles, depths, and water flow rates with mathematical accuracy. Another from Euro outlines astronomical observations tracking Venus's cycle with a precision that modern astronomers use to calibrate ancient chronologies. Dr. Sarah Chun, analyzing these texts in 2015, saw them as more than records. They were manuals designed to guide future generations in rebuilding what was lost. The Sumerian schools, or Eduba, reinforced this preservation, training scribes to memorize vast corpora of texts from legal codes to star charts. Chun, in her Yale office, began to see cuneiform as a cultural firewall protecting knowledge against the fires of time. Yet much of this knowledge was lost. Dr. Irving in the British Museum's vault in 2018 estimated that less than 20% of recovered cuneiform tablets have been fully translated. Thousands remain in storage, their secrets locked in unread wedges. The destruction of Sumerian libraries, Uruk, Nippur, Eridubi fire, conquest or neglect erased countless texts. When Nineveh fell in 612 B.C., the burning of Ashurbanipal's library preserved some tablets by baking them, but others crumbled to dust. Finkel, holding a fragmented tablet, felt a quiet rage at the scale of the loss. For every surviving text, dozens more vanished, leaving gaps in our understanding of Suma's origins. The untranslated tablets sitting in museum vaults might hold the key to cuneiform's true proposer. Purpose the Sumerians hinted at in their myths, calling their writing a gift from the Anunnaki, a tool to remember what humanity was never meant to forget. The silence of those untranslated tablets is deafening. It echoes the silence beneath Suma's cities where no earlier scripts or cultures bridge the gap to cuneiform's complexity. Dr. Klaus Schmidt, reflecting on Göbekli in 2019, saw a parallel in its buried stones. A site 6,000 years older than Suma that also appeared without precursors. Could Göbeklit's carvings, with their astronomical alignments and symbolic figures, be a proto-writing system, a precursor to cuneiform's wedges? The Sumerians' obsession with preservation, burying tablets encoding knowledge in myths, Göbeklit's burial suggesting a shared fear of loss. Perhaps cuneiform was not an invention but a reinvention. A system designed to capture a legacy that was already fading when the first stylus touched clay. As the archive's lights dim, the tablets sit in their climate-controlled silence, their wedges sharp against the clay. They are more than relics. They are a message written by a civilization that understood the fragility of knowledge. The Sumerians, with their perfect cities and star charts, didn't stumble into writing. They wielded it like a weapon against oblivion, preserving a truth we can only glimpse in fragments. The night sky above ancient Mesopotamia in 3,200 B.C. was a canvas of infinite darkness, untainted by the glow of modern cities. Thousands of stars pierced the blackness, each a silent mystery beckoning the Sumerians who gazed upward from the flat rooftops of their mud-brick homes. Without telescopes, compasses, or even the concept of the wheel, they mapped the heavens with a precision that defies explanation, recording observations so accurate they rival modern calculations. Their star charts etched into clay, tracked planets, and predicted eclipses with a sophistication that seems impossible for a civilization just learning to write. How did they see what they saw? And who taught them to read patterns in the sky that would take other cultures millennia to discern? In 1998, Dr. Hermann Hunger stood in the quiet of Vienna's Academy of Sciences, his hands trembling as he held a photograph of a tablet catalogued as VAT 4,956. This Babylonian artifact, copied from older Sumerian records, contained an astronomical diary for the year 568 B.C., detailing planetary positions, lunar phases, and stellar configurations. But what stopped Hunger's breath wasn't its agit, was its accuracy. The tablet recorded the synodic month, the time between successive full moons, as 29 days, 12 hours. 44 minutes, and 3 seconds. Modern astronomy places it at 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, and 9 seconds, a difference of less than half a second achieved by a people using water clocks and shadows. This precision suggested a knowledge base far beyond their tools. Hunger, staring out at the Vienna skyline, felt a vertigo that mirrored the awe of those ancient stargazers who seemed to see infinity with nothing but their eyes and clay. The Sumerians' astronomical achievements were not isolated anomalies. Their earliest records from around 200 B.C. CE show a mastery of celestial mechanics that should have taken centuries to develop. They distinguished planets from stars, recognizing that Venus, Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn followed unique paths across the sky. They understood Venus as a single entity, whether it appeared as the morning or evening star, a realization that eluded the Greeks until the 6th century BCE. The Venus tablet of Ammi-Suduka, copied from Sumerian sources, tracked its 584-day cycle with data so precise that modern astronomers use it to anchor ancient chronologies. Dr. Hunger, cross-referencing these tablets with modern software, found that Sumerian eclipse predictions matched observations within fractions of a degree. How could a civilization supposedly in its infancy achieve such accuracy without instruments we associate with advanced astronomy? The tablets themselves are a marvel of precision. One, catalogued as K2669 in the British Museum, describes Saturn's rings as handles and Jupiter's moons as family members, details barely discernible without magnification. Another, from Nieper, records the precession of the equinoxes, slow wobble of Earth's axis that shifts stellar positions over centuries. Dr. Margaret Whitney, studying these texts in 2010, calculated that the ziggurat of was aligned to stellar positions as they appeared 4,000 years ago. Accounting for this precession, the Sumerians' ability to detect such subtle shifts suggests observations spanning generations. Yet their earliest records show no crude precursors, no tentative star charts refined over time. Whitney, standing atop the ziggurat's weathered steps, felt a chill. These were not the notes of amateurs, but the records of experts, as if someone had handed them a manual for mapping the cosmos. The Sumerians' base 60 mathematics underpinned their astronomy, providing a framework so elegant it still governs our measurement of time and space. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 360 degrees in a circle. These are Sumerian legacies encoded in clay tablets that calculated planetary orbits with startling accuracy. Dr. Eleanor Robson, examining tablet YBC 7-289 at Oxford in 2005, found annotations that computed angular measurements and fractional cycles, techniques that anticipated modern trigonometry. The base 60, with its 12-divist precise division of celestial arcs without the messy fractions that plague other numerical systems. Robson, tracing the tablet's wedges, wondered why base 60. Most counting systems arise from human anatomy. Base 10 from fingers, base 20 from fingers and toes. Base 60 feels engineered, as if designed by minds that understood astronomical calculations long before the Sumerians pressed their first tablet. The ziggurats, those towering stepped pyramids, were more than temples. They were observatories. Dr. Whitney, in her 2010 survey of ziggurat, noted its cardinal alignment with corners pointing precisely north, south, east, and west. Its staircases faced specific celestial rising points, and its upper platform offered an unobstructed view of the sky designed to track planets and stars. The ziggurat at Eridu, which the Sumerians claimed was the first city ever built, contained 17 construction layers, each following the same astronomical plan, as if preserving a sacred blueprint. Whitney's laser scans revealed that the ziggurat's proportions encoded mathematical ratios tied to celestial cycles, suggesting a purpose beyond ritual. These structures were instruments built to measure the cosmos with a precision that implied inherited knowledge. Standing on Eridu's platform, Whitney felt the weight of a culture that seemed to know the stars as intimately as we know our own streets. The Sumerian myths offer a tantalizing clue to this knowledge's origins. The Enuma Elish describes the god Marduk establishing the constellations and setting the calendar that governed earthly affairs. Enki, the god of wisdom, taught humanity to track celestial bodies and calculate time. Dr. Sarah Chin, analyzing these texts at Yale in 2015, saw them not as symbolic myths but as encoded instructions, preserving astronomical knowledge in narrative form. The Anunnaki, those who came down from heaven, are portrayed as teachers delivering star charts and mathematical systems. Chin, in her quiet office, began to wonder if these were not gods, but memories of instructors, perhaps an advanced human culture, or, as some speculate, extraterrestrial visitors who gifted the Sumerians a science they couldn't have developed alone. The myth's specificity, detailing how to observe Venus or predict eclipses, feels like a user manual, not poetry. The absence of developmental stages in Sumerian astronomy is what unsettles scholars most. Knowledge is supposed to evolve gradually, crude observations refined over generations into sophisticated systems. But Suma's earliest star charts are also its most accurate. Later Babylonian and Assyrian copies like VAT4, 956 show declining precision as if each generation understood less than the one before. Dr. Hunger in his 998 study described this as knowledge degrading like a photocopy of a photocopy, losing clarity with each retelling. The Sumerians' first tablets from Uruk and Nippur contain observations of planetary motions and eclipse cycles that rival modern data with no evidence of the trial and error phase expected in a new science. Hunger, sitting in Vienna's growing darkness, felt a question forming. If the Sumerians didn't build this knowledge through observation, who did? The global parallels deepen the mystery. Cultures worldwide tell of sky teachers delivering astronomical knowledge. In Egypt, taught the measurement of time and stars. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl brought calendars aligned with celestial events. The Indian Vedas describe sages who mapped the heavens with mathematical precision. Dr. Andrew Collins, studying these myths in 2014, proposed a shared memory of a lost source, a civilization that seeded astronomy across the ancient world. The Sumerians, as the first to record these tales in cuneiform, may have preserved the clearest account. Their tablets buried in desert vaults suggest a deliberate effort to protect this knowledge as if they feared its loss. Collins, comparing Sumerian star charts to Vedic texts, wondered if a single forgotten culture once connected these distant peoples. Its legacy fragmented by time. The archaeological silence beneath Suma's observatories is haunting. In the deepest layers of Uruk and Eridu, there are no primitive star charts, no early tools for tracking the sky. Dr. John Brennan, excavating at Nippur in 2018, described the absence as deliberate, as if the record had been swept clean. This mirrors the silence at Göbekli, a 9,600 B.C. site in Turkey with pillars aligned to Sirius and solstices. Could Göbeklit's builders 6,000 years before Sa have been the source of this astronomical knowledge passed down through oral traditions until cuneiform could capture it? Brennan, sifting through Nippur's sand, felt as if he was standing on the edge of a lost world. The secrets buried just beyond reach. The Sumerians' astronomy was not just academic, shaped their entire civilization. Their agriculture relied on precise calendars tied to lunar and solar cycles. Their festivals aligned with equinoxes and solstices. Their kings claimed legitimacy through celestial portents as if the stars themselves endorsed their rule. Dr. Amanda Stelza, studying Sumerian culture in Chicago in 2020, noted that this integration suggests a deep understanding of the cosmos not as a distant spectacle but as a framework for life. The ziggurats with their star-aligned platforms were tools for synchronizing society with the heavens, a practice that feels inherited rather than invented. Stelza, gazing at a tablet star map, wondered if the Sumerians were following instructions from a source that saw the sky as a blueprint for civilization. The implications are profound. If Sumerian astronomy was inherited, not developed, then our understanding of human progress is flawed. The tablets with their precise calculations suggest a knowledge system that predates Sumer, perhaps stretching back to Beklit or beyond. The Anunnaki described as sky teachers might represent a memory of those who delivered this science, human or otherwise. The silence of the untranslated tablets, thousands of which remain in museum vaults, holds the potential to rewrite this story. Dr. Irving Finkel in the British Museum in 2018 estimated that less than 20% of cuneiform texts have been studied. They're wedges waiting to reveal more about the stars, as the stars will above modern Iraq. The Sumerians' observations endure, their legacy ticking in our clocks, guiding our satellites. Imagine the scribes on their rooftops, mapping infinity with clay and starlight, preserving a truth we're still struggling to understand. Because in those ancient wedges, a forgotten sky waits to be rediscovered, whispering that we may be seeing through eyes that once belonged to someone else. The clock on your wall ticks softly, its second hand sweeping through 60 increments to mark a minute. 60 minutes to an hour, a rhythm so familiar it's invisible. In the glow of your phone's GPS, angles are measured in degrees, minutes, and seconds, tracing a circle of 360 degrees. These systems woven into the fabric of modern life feel as natural as breathing. Yet their origins lie in the sun-scorched plains of ancient Sumer. 5,000 years ago, around 3,200 B.C., the Sumerians developed a base 60 mathematical system so elegant and enduring that it governs how we measure time and space today. But this was no accidental discovery. No practical counting method born of tallying sheep. It was a theoretical masterpiece, appearing fully formed in the earliest clay tablets, as if gifted by minds that understood its power long before the Sumerians pressed their first wedge. In 2005, Dr. Elenina Robson sat in her office at the Oriental Institute in Oxford, surrounded by photographs of cuneiform tablets that predated the Greek mathematicians by 2 millennia. One tablet catalogued as YBC 7. 289 lay before Hera, a small clay square etched with precise wedges that changed her understanding of mathematical history. The tablet depicted a square with diagonal lines and numerical annotations demonstrating the Pythagorean theorem 1,000 years before Pythagoras was born. The calculations performed in base 60 arithmetic showed an approximation of the square root of 2 accurate to multiple decimal places. Robson's fingers traced the wedges, her mind reeling. This wasn't the crude arithmetic of a civilization learning to count. It was the work of minds that grasped abstract principles, crafting a system so sophisticated it underpinned technologies the Sumerians could never have imagined. The base 60 system or sexdecimal is a mathematical marvel. Unlike base 10, which derives from counting on fingers, or base 20, which includes toes, base 60 has no obvious origin in human anatomy. Its power lies in its divisibility. 60 can be divided by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, 30, and 60, making it ideal for precise calculations involving fractions and angles. This elegance is why we still use it to divide hours into minutes, circles into degrees. Dr. Robson, poring over the tablet's annotations, noted its use in complex computations. Reciprocal tables, square and cube roots, even approximations of irrational numbers that wouldn't be formally defined until classical Greece. The Sumerians didn't just stumble upon this system. They wielded it with a confidence that suggested deep familiarity, as if it were inherited from a source already versed in its applications. The earliest Sumerian mathematical tablets from Uruk and Nippur around 3,200 B.C. show no developmental phase. Where other cultures leave traces of trial and error, crude tally marks evolving into numerical systems, Sumer's tablets begin with mastery. Dr. Samuel Noah Kramer, studying similar tablets in 1956 at the University of Pennsylvania, described their calculations as surgically precise. One tablet catalogued as 927-16 contained multiplication tables and reciprocal pairs calculated to a level of accuracy that modern students struggle to match. These weren't rough approximations but exact values designed for applications like astronomy and engineering. Kramer, in the archive's dim light, felt a chill. The absence of earlier simpler systems suggested that the Sumerians were not inventing mathematics but preserving it following a blueprint they didn't create. The tablet's content reveals the system's versatility. A text from Lagash catalogued as BM23. 456 calculated areas of fields with irregular shapes using geometric methods that anticipated later Greek mathematics. Another from Eridu computed volumes for ziggurat construction incorporating ratios that aligned with celestial cycles. Dr. Margaret Whitney, examining these tablets in 2010, noted that the ziggurat of proportions followed base 60 ratios, its angles and heights encoding astronomical measurements. The system's precision allowed Sumerian architects to align their temples with stars like Sirius, accounting for axial precession of phenomenon requiring centuries of observation. Whitney, standing in ruins, wondered how a culture just learning to write could produce mathematics so perfectly suited for cosmic calculations. The Sumerian myths offer a clue to this mystery. The Enuma Elish describes the god Marduk establishing the constellations and setting the calendar, while Enki, the god of wisdom, delivers the cosmic principles that include mathematics. Dr. Sarah Chun, analyzing these texts at Yale in 2015, saw them as more than myths. The MI weren't divine decrees but encoded instructions detailing how to calculate angles, divide time, and measure space. One myth. Enki and the world order specifies numerical systems for tracking grain and livestock using base 60 to manage complex fractions. Chin, in her quiet office, began to suspect that the Anunnaki, those who came down from heaven, were not gods, but teachers, perhaps an advanced human culture, or as some speculate, extraterrestrial visitors who gifted the Sumerians a mathematical framework they couldn't have developed alone. The global impact of base 60 is staggering. Every time you check your watch, you're using a Sumerian system. Its 60-second increments ticking in sync with their ancient calculations. GPS satellites rely on angular measurements derived from Sumerian degrees, guiding ships and planes with a precision rooted in clay tablets. Dr. Robson, reflecting on this in 2005, felt a peculiar vertigo. The entire infrastructure of modern technology, clocks, navigation, even computer processes synchronizing operations, rests on a mathematical foundation laid by a people who never saw an airplane or imagined a satellite. Yet, their system works flawlessly for applications they couldn't have anticipated. How does a civilization accidentally create a framework so robust it survives 5,000 years of cultural upheaval? The absence of competing numerical systems deepens the enigma. In other ancient cultures, we see rival systems: Egypt's base 10 hieroglyphic numerals, China's evolving rod numerals. But in Sumer, base 60 dominates from the earliest records with no evidence of experimentation or alternatives. Dr. John Brennan, excavating at Dnieper in 2018, found mathematical tablets in the deepest layers. Their calculations already sophisticated. No crude tallies or simpler bases precede them, as if the system appeared fully formed. Brennan, sifting through the sand, described the silence beneath these tablets as deliberate, like a room where the blueprints had been removed. The Sumerians' myths reinforce this, describing mathematics as a gift from the Anunnaki, not a human invention. The word "me" tied to cosmic order suggests a system recovered from chaos, not created from scratch. The Sumerian schools, or Eduba, reveal the system's preservation. Young scribes memorized vast tables of numerical relationships, multiplication, reciprocal, squares, and cubal in base 60. Dr. Amanda Stelza, studying these educational texts in Chicago in 2020, noted that students weren't exploring new methods but preserving established ones. The tablets, like those from Uruk's tablet houses, show a pedagogical system designed to maintain knowledge, not innovate. Stella, examining a student's practice tablet, saw it as a ritual of memory, ensuring that the system's precision endured across generations. This obsession with preservation mirrors the Sumerians' broader cultural impulse, breeding tablets in vaults, building ziggurats to last millennia, encoding knowledge in myths to survive catastrophe. The flood myths like the Atrahasis provide context for this impulse. They describe a deluge that nearly erased civilization, with Zu-Sudra chosen to preserve the me through the chaos. Archaeological evidence from Shuruppak and Kish dated to 900 BCE shows silt layers marking a cultural disruption. Dr. Irving Finkel, studying these myths in the British Museum in 2018, saw the Sumerians' mathematical tablets as part of this preservation effort designed to safeguard knowledge against another flood. The base 60 system, with its universal applicability, was a perfect tool for this. Its durability encoded in clay that could withstand fire and time. Finkel, holding a fragmented tablet, felt a pang of lost. Thousands of tablets remain untranslated, their mathematical secrets locked in museum vaults. The global parallels amplify the mystery. Other ancient cultures like the Babylonians and Indians adopted base 60 for astronomical calculations, but none show its origins. The Indian Vedas describe mathematical systems for tracking celestial cycles, echoing Sumerian methods. Egyptian astronomy, while precise, relied on simpler base 10 systems. Dr. Andrew Collins, studying comparative mathematics in 2014, proposed that base 60 might stem from a lost source, a civilization that seeded numerical knowledge across the ancient world. The Sumerians, as the first to record it in cuneiform, may have preserved the clearest trace of this source, their tablets acting as a mathematical archive for a forgotten era. The connection to Gbasip 6,000 years older is haunting. Its pillars, aligned with Sirius and solstices, suggest a pre-agricultural culture with advanced mathematical knowledge. Dr. Klaus Schmidt, excavating the site in 2019, noted that its geometric proportions imply a system like base 60 used to calculate angles and alignments. Could Göbekli builders have been the Sumerians' distant predecessors? Their knowledge passed down through oral traditions until cuneiform captured it. The deliberate burial of Gbasip around 8,000 BCE mirrors the Sumerians' buried tablets, suggesting a shared fear of losser, fear that their mathematics was too precious to fade. As the Oxford clock chimes, its 60-second rhythm echoing Sumer's legacy, the tablets sit in silence, their wedges sharp against the clay. They are more than numbers. They are a message written by a civilization that understood the fragility of knowledge. The Sumerians didn't invent base 60. They preserved it, their calculations a lifeline to a past we can't see. The Iraqi sun climbs high over the desert, casting sharp shadows across the weathered bricks of the ziggurat. Of its stepped sides rise like a man-made mountain, defying the sands that have buried so much of Sumer's past. Built around 100 BC, this towering structure is more than a template, a monument to a civilization that seemed to know too much too soon. Its precise angles, astronomical alignments, and encoded mathematics suggest a purpose beyond worship, as if it were designed to preserve knowledge that could not be trusted to human memory alone. The Sumerians built their ziggurats with an obsessive fidelity, repeating the same design across centuries and cities, as if following instructions they dared not alter. Dr. Margaret Whitney stood at the base of ziggurat in 2010, her notebook filled with measurements that challenged everything she knew about ancient architecture. The structure, though eroded by 4 millennia, still cast a shadow with the precision of a sundial, marking the winter solstice as it had since the reign of King Uramu. Its corners aligned almost exactly with the cardinal directions north, south, east, and western, achievement requiring sophisticated astronomical and geometric knowledge. The 3 staircases climbing its sides faced specific celestial rising points. Their angles calculated to track the movements of planets like Venus. Whitney's laser scans revealed that the ziggurat's proportions followed mathematical ratios tied to celestial cycles. Its height and width encoding constants that wouldn't be formally defined until classical Greece. This was no ordinary template, was an instrument. A stone machine built to measure the cosmos and preserve its secrets. The ziggurats of Sumer, from to Eridu to Nippur, share a haunting consistency. Each follows the same essential design. A stepped pyramid with a flat platform oriented to the stars. Built with mud brick and baked clay. Dr. Whitney surveying sites across Mesopotamia noted that their variations were superficial, different sizes. Different decorative tiles. But their core plans were identical. As if every city received the same architectural blueprint. Eridu, the Sumerians' mythical first city. Archaeologists uncovered 17 construction layers beneath the main ziggurat. Each rebuilt with the same proportions. The same orientation. The same astronomical alignments. This wasn't evolution, but repetition. A cultural obsession with preserving a pattern across centuries. Whitney climbing Eridu's worn steps felt a weight in the air, as if the builders were terrified of forgetting something vital. Something they couldn't explain. The precision of these structures is staggering. Dr. John Brennan, excavating at Nippur in 2018, found that the ziggurat's foundations were cut into bedrock with a confidence that implied advanced engineering. The bricks, though simple clay, were laid with mathematical accuracy. Their angles precise to within fractions of a degree. Embedded in the walls of some ziggurats were clay tablets, inscribed with cuneiform records of astronomical observation star positions, planetary cycles, eclipse predictions. Brennan, holding one such tablet under the desert sun, realized that these structures were not just places of worship, but repositories of knowledge. Their very architecture, a backup drive for information too precious to lose. The ziggurat, of standing over 100 foot tall in its prime, was positioned to serve as a massive observatory. Its upper platform offering an unobstructed view of the Mesopotamian sky. The astronomical alignments deepened the mystery. Dr. Whitney's 2010 analysis showed that ziggurat tracked Venus's rising points with an accuracy that accounted for axial precession. The slow wobble of Earth's axis that shifts stellar positions over millennia. This phenomenon, so subtle it requires centuries of observation to detect, was encoded in the ziggurat's design. Its staircases and platforms aligned to a sky, as it appeared 4,000 years ago. Similar alignments appear at Eridu and Uruk, where ziggurats faced Sirius and solstice points. Dr. Martin Swatman, studying related sites like Baklit in 2017, noted that such precision suggests a knowledge of celestial mechanics far beyond what a Bronze Age culture should possess. Whitney, standing on Earth's platform, felt a chill. The ziggurats were not built for the living. They were built for memory, designed to preserve astronomical data in stone and clay. The Sumerian myths reinforce this idea. The Enuma Elish describes the god Marduk establishing sacred architecture to connect earth and heaven, while Enki, the god of wisdom, provides instructions for building temples aligned with the stars. Dr. Sarachin, analyzing these texts at Yale in 2015, saw them as more than religious stories. They were blueprints encoding construction techniques and astronomical knowledge in narrative form. The divine principles delivered by the Anunnaki included specifications for ziggurat design, proportions, angles, and alignments. Chin, in her quiet office, began to suspect that the Anunnaki were not gods, but teachers, perhaps an advanced culture, whose knowledge the Sumerians preserved through obsessive repetition. The word "me" suggests something recovered, not invented, as if the ziggurats were rebuilding a system from a lost past. The engineering of the ziggurats is equally perplexing. Dr. Amanda, as if the ziggurats were rebuilding a system from a lost past. The engineering of the ziggurats is equally perplexing. Dr. Amanda Stelza, studying Mesopotamian architecture in Chicago in 2020, found that their construction required an understanding of load distribution and structural stability. The mud brick, though fragile, was mixed with straw in precise ratios to maximize durability. A technique detailed in myths like Enki and Ninmah. The ziggurat stepped design distributed weight evenly, preventing collapse even after millennia of erosion. Stelza, examining a reconstructed model, noted that the Sumerians used base 60 mathematics to calculate volumes and angles, ensuring the structures could withstand earthquakes and floods. This wasn't trial and error engineering, but a system executed with the confidence of prior experience, as if the Sumerians were following a manual they didn't write. The global parallels add another layer to the enigma. Other ancient cultures built monumental architecture. Egypt's pyramids, Stonehenge, the Maltese temples. But none match the ziggurats' astronomical precision and cultural consistency. Dr. Andrew Collins, studying comparative archaeology in 2014, noted that sites like Baklit, dated to 9,600 B.C., share the Sumerians' obsession with celestial alignments. Gobisi's T-shaped pillars aligned with Sirius suggest a pre-agricultural culture with advanced knowledge buried deliberately to preserve it. The Sumerians 6,000 years later seem to echo this impulse. Their ziggurats acting as stone libraries for a knowledge system that predates their cities. Collins, comparing these sites, wondered if a lost civilization seeded this architectural tradition. Its legacy fragmented across the ancient world. The flood myths provide context for this preservation. The Atresis describes a deluge that nearly erased civilization, with Zusra chosen to carry the Me through the chaos. Archaeological evidence from Shuruppak, dated to 2,900 B.C. shows silt layers marking a cultural disruption. Dr. Irving Finkel, studying these myths in the British Museum in 2018, saw the ziggurats as part of this effort to safeguard knowledge. Their durability, built to last millennia, suggests the Sumerians feared another catastrophe. Finkel, holding a tablet embedded in a ziggurat's wall, felt a pang of loss. Thousands of such tablets remain untranslated. Their cuneiform wedges holding astronomical and mathematical secrets that could reveal the ziggurat's true purpose. The silence beneath the ziggurats is haunting. In the deepest layers of Andidu, there are no primitive structures, no failed experiments. Dr. John Brennan, excavating at Nippur in 2018, described the absence as deliberate, as if the record had been swept clean. This mirrors the silence at Bek Leap, where no earlier settlements explain its sophistication. Could the ziggurats be a continuation of that earlier tradition? A second attempt to preserve what was lost? The Sumerians' myths describing the Anunnaki as teachers suggest they were rebuilding from a blueprint. Their ziggurats encoding knowledge in a language of stone and stars. Brennan, sifting through Nippur's sand, felt as if he stood on the edge of a forgotten world. The secrets buried just beyond reach. The ziggurats' endurance is their final message. Despite wars, floods, and the collapse of empires, they stand. Their alignments still tracking celestial events. Their proportions still revealing mathematical truths. Dr. Whitney, descending ancient stairs in 2010, saw tourists photographing ruins they didn't understand. Standing on a library they couldn't read. The ziggurats are more than relics. They are a warning built by a people who knew that civilizations fall. Languages die and knowledge fades. They encoded their wisdom in brick and mortar, trusting it would survive when all else was lost. Listeners of Codex of the Lost, let the mystery of the ziggurats carry you into the night. Imagine the builders, their hands shaping clay, their eyes on the stars, preserving a truth we're still struggling to decipher. Because in those ancient stones, a forgotten library waits, whispering that we may be standing on knowledge we've yet to reclaim. The flickering lamplight casts shadows across the clay tablets in a quiet office at Yale's Department of Near Eastern Languages, where ancient Sumerian stories whisper secrets from a world 5,000 years gone. These myths, etched in cuneiform form by the scribes of Uruk and Eridu, are not mere tales of gods and heroes, but something far more profound: coded archive of knowledge, preserving technical expertise in a form that could survive the collapse of empires. The Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, beings who descended from the heavens to teach humanity the arts of civilization, irrigation, medicine, law, and astronomy. But what if these stories were not divine fantasies, but deliberate vessels for technical instructions designed to outlast floods, fires, and forgetting? In 2015, Dr. Sarah Chun sat at her desk surrounded by translations of Sumerian texts that challenged everything she thought she knew about mythology. As a scholar of comparative religion, Chun had studied creation myths from every corner of the world: tales of gods, forging the cosmos with power and will, demanding worship from grateful humans. But the Sumerian myths were different. They didn't read like spiritual allegories. They read like project manuals. The text Enki and the World Order, one of the oldest narratives from Europe, described Enki, the god of wisdom, traveling across Mesopotamia to assign roles to each city. To Eridu, he gave irrigation systems, specifying the depth of canals and the spacing of water gates. He delivered protocols for brick production, detailing ratios of clay to straw. To Nippur, he assigned astronomical observations with instructions for tracking Venus's cycle. Chen's pulse quickened as she read. This wasn't mythology. It was project management, a blueprint for civilization encoded in sacred narrative. The specificity of these myths is what sets them apart. Unlike the vague pronouncements of Greek or Norse gods, the Sumerian pantheon operated with the precision of engineers. Enki didn't merely decree that canals should exist. He explained their construction from the angle of slopes to the timing of flood management. In Enki and Ninmah, the goddess Ninmah molds humans from clay, but the text includes a recipe: 3 parts clay to 1 part water needed until it holds shape without cracking. Dr. Amanda Stelza, studying this myth in Chicago in 2020, recognized it as a pottery instruction, not a divine metaphor. The Sumerians embedded practical knowledge in their stories: how to build, how to heal, how to govern us if they knew that narrative was a more durable medium than clay or stone. Stelza, poring over the text, felt a chill. These myths were not about creation but preservation, a way to safeguard technical expertise against the chaos of time. The Anunnaki, central to these stories, are described as those who came down from heaven. Their roles are strikingly consistent across centuries, from Sumer to Akkad to Babylon. Enki governs hydraulic engineering and urban planning. Ninmah oversees medical procedures and public health. Nibu manages record-keeping and writing. Utu regulates legal contracts and solar timekeeping. Dr. Chun, cross-referencing tablets in 2015, noted that this stability was unusual. Most mythologies evolve, their gods' roles shifting with cultural changes. But the Anunnaki's functions remained fixed, as if they were preserving a curriculum that couldn't be altered. Chun began to wonder if the Anunnaki were not gods, but a cultural memory of teachers, perhaps an advanced human caste, or, as some speculate, extraterrestrial instructors whose knowledge was encoded in stories to ensure its survival. This encoding was a stroke of genius. In a world without mass literacy, where empires rose and fell, how do you preserve complex technical knowledge across generations? You wrap it in stories that people will repeat, consider sacred, and protect from alteration. Dr. John Brennan, analyzing Sumerian literature at Cambridge in 2018, saw this as a cultural immune system designed to protect critical information from the degradation that affects secular records. The divine principles delivered by the Anunnaki were not abstract laws but packets of knowledge blueprints for irrigation, medicine, and governance. By embedding them in myths, the Sumerians ensured they would be memorized and recited, even if the physical tablets were lost. Brennan, holding a fragmented tablet, felt the weight of this strategia civilization that knew its knowledge was fragile and took extraordinary measures to protect it. The medical knowledge in these myths is particularly striking. Texts attributed to Ninmah describe herbal treatments, surgical procedures, and diagnostic techniques with a precision that suggests clinical experience. One tablet catalogued as BM 23,457 details a remedy for fever using willow bark, a precursor to modern aspirin. Another describes setting a broken bone with splints and bandages, specifying materials and techniques. Dr. Margaret Whitney, collaborating with medical historians in 2010, found these descriptions eerily accurate, reflecting a sophisticated understanding of anatomy and pharmacology. Yet the Sumerians presented this knowledge as divine wisdom, not human discovery, as if they were transcribing lessons from a higher source. Whitney, studying the tablet under lamplight, wondered if this was a deliberate choice to cloak empirical science in mythology to ensure its transmission through cultural upheaval. The legal and administrative knowledge is equally impressive. Nabu, the god of writing, is associated with texts that outline contract law, property rights, and taxation systems. A tablet from Lagash dated to 20,400 BCE describes a dispute over land ownership with protocols for arbitration and standardized measurements. Dr. Irving Finkel, studying these texts in the British Museum in 2018, noted their comparability to modern legal frameworks capable of governing complex urban societies. Yet these were presented as divine commands, not human innovations embedded in stories to make them unforgettable. Finkel, holding a tablet, saw the Sumerians' genius. By tying law to mythology, they ensured its preservation even when libraries burned or scribes forgot their craft. The myth's treatment of failure is another clue. Unlike most creation stories where gods are infallible, Sumerian tales acknowledge trial and error. In Enki and Ninmah, Ninmah's early attempts at human creation produce beings with limitations: blindness, lameness, cognitive impairments. But Enki assigns them social roles, creating a system for integrating diversity. Dr. Chin, analyzing this in 2015, saw it as a medical classification system, not a theological allegory, detailing how to care for individuals with different capabilities. This iterative approach, experimenting, refining, problem-solving, feels like engineering methodology, not divine perfection. Chun began to suspect that the Sumerians were preserving memories of a systematic process, perhaps taught by real instructors whose identities were lost to time. The flood myths, like the Atrahasis, provide context for this preservation. They describe a deluge that nearly erased civilization, with Zusra chosen to carry the Me through the chaos. Archaeological evidence from Shuruppak dated to 2900 BCE shows silt layers marking a cultural disruption. Dr. Andrew Collins, studying these myths in 2014, proposed that they reflect a real catastrophe, with the Sumerians rebuilding from fragments of a lost world. The MI encoded in myths were the tools for this reconstruction. Instructions for canals, medicine, and law preserved in stories that could survive when tablets crumbled. Collins, comparing Sumerian myths to global flood stories, wondered if they all preserved a shared memory of a civilization that vanished, its knowledge fragmented across cultures. The connection to Golip 6,000 years earlier is haunting. The Turkish site's pillars, carved with animals and aligned with stars, suggest a pre-agricultural culture with advanced knowledge. Dr. Klaus Schmidt, excavating Göbekli in 2019, saw its deliberate burial as a preservation act mirroring the Sumerians' buried tablets and myths. Could go builders have been the source of the me? Their knowledge passed down through oral traditions until cuneiform captured it. The Sumerians' myths with their tales of sky teachers feel like an echo of this earlier culture. Their ziggurats and tablets a continuation of a legacy that began in stone. Schmidt standing among the pillars felt a silence that spoke of a truth buried too deep to reach. The loss of Sumerian knowledge underscores the myth's purpose. Dr. Finkel in 2018 estimated that less than 20% of cuneiform tablets have been translated, with thousands languishing in museum vaults. Libraries at Urukka and Nippur were destroyed by conquest or neglect, their texts reduced to fragments. The myths, however, endured, carried through oral recitation and ritual. Dr. Amanda Stelza, studying the Kesh Temple hymn in 2020, found it encoded construction techniques for ziggurats. Its verses a checklist for builders. This wasn't poetry but a manual disguised to survive. Stelza in her Chicago office saw the myths as a firewall protecting knowledge from the fires of history. As the Yale office grows dark, the tablets sit in silence. Their stories a testament to a civilization that feared forgetting. The Sumerians didn't create their myths. They preserved them, encoding technical wisdom in tales of gods to outlast time. Listeners of Codex of the Lost, let the mystery of Sumerian mythology carry you into the night. Imagine the scribes, their voices chanting Enki's instructions, their stories a shield against oblivion. Because in those ancient tales, a forgotten truth waits, a truth that says we may be reciting the lessons of teachers we can no longer name. The wind sweeps across the Mesopotamian plain, stirring the dust where ancient cities once stood, their ruins whispering of a time when the world nearly ended. In the Sumerian myths, a great flood swept away humanity, leaving only a chosen survivor to rebuild from the fragments of a lost age. These stories etched in cuneiform on clay tablets speak of a deluge so catastrophic it resets civilization. Yet they echo across cultures, from the biblical Noah to the Indian menu. Beneath the sands of Sherapak and Kish, archaeologists have found silt layers dated to around 2900 BCE that mark a real disruption, a moment when sophisticated societies vanished, replaced by simpler ones. But the Sumerians who rose after this flood wielded knowledge far beyond what survivors should possess, as if they were reconstructing from a blueprint preserved through chaos. In 2018, Dr. John Brennan stood in the excavation pit at Shurapak, his hands sifting through a thick layer of riverine silt that marked a violent interruption in the archaeological record dated to approximately 2900 BC. This layer told a story of destruction, not a global deluge, but a localized flood that devastated the Fertile Crescent where Suma's first cities thrived. Similar silk deposits appeared at Kish and Uro, each signaling a cultural break where complex urban settlements gave way to simpler communities. Brennan, brushing dirt from a shattered tablet, felt a chill. The Sumerian myths like the Atrahasis and the tale of Zusra described a flood sent by the gods to erase humanity, sparing only a survivor chosen to preserve the Mether. Divine principles of civilization. These weren't mere stories. They seemed to preserve a memory of a real catastrophe, one that nearly obliterated a sophisticated world. The Atrahasis, one of the oldest Sumerian texts, tells of the Anunnaki, those who came down from heaven, deciding to flood the earth when humanity grew too noisy. Enki, the god of wisdom, warned Zudra, instructing him to build a boat and save the knowledge of writing, mathematics, and engineering. Dr. Sarah Chun, analyzing this myth at Yale in 2015, noted its specificity. Sudra wasn't chosen for moral purity, but for his wisdom, tasked with carrying forward a cultural archive through the deluge. The text describes the flood's aftermath, a world reduced to silence, with Sudra rebuilding cities using the me as a guide. Chun, in her quiet office, saw this as more than mythology. It was a historical record cloaked in divine narrative of a society rebuilding from fragments of a lost era. The archaeological evidence supports this interpretation. The silt layers at Shuruppak, Kish, and dated to 900 B.C. mark a sharp decline in cultural complexity. Before the flood, these sites boasted advanced urban planning with grid-like streets and engineered drainage systems. After the flood, the settlements were smaller, their pottery cruder, their tools simpler. Yet, within a few centuries, Sumerian civilization re-emerged with astonishing sophistication, cities like Uruk housing 80,000 people. Ziggurats aligned with stars and cuneiform tablets recording complex mathematics. Dr. Brennan studying these layers in 2018 found no gradual recovery. The Sumerians who rebuilt seemed to possess knowledge that should have taken generations to rediscover. As if they were working from a preserved template. The myth's global parallels deepen the mystery. The biblical story of Noah, the Indian tale of Manu, and the Mesopotamian Ziora share eerie similarities. A chosen survivor, a boat, a flood that resets the world, and a mission to preserve knowledge. Dr. Andrew Collins, studying comparative mythology in 2014, proposed that these stories reflect a shared memory of a real catastrophe, perhaps tied to the Younger Dust period around 10,800 B.C., when climatic upheaval triggered floods and disruptions. While Sumer's flood dated to 900 B.C. was more recent, it may echo an older memory passed down through oral traditions until cuneiform captured it. Collins, comparing these myths, wondered if they all preserved fragments of a lost civilization. Its knowledge scattered across cultures like debris after a storm. The Sumerians' post-flood achievements are what trouble scholars most. Their base 60 mathematics, cuneiform script, and astronomical observations appeared with a precision that suggests continuity, not reinvention. Dr. Elenina Robson, examining mathematical tablets in Oxford in 2005, found calculations of square roots and geometric ratios that should have required centuries of development. Yet these tablets from the earliest layers of Uro show no crude precursors. Similarly, the ziggurats, rebuilt after the flood, followed precise astronomical alignments as if the builders had access to a star chart from a previous era. Robson, tracing the wedges of tablet YBC 7,289, felt a vertigo. The Sumerians weren't starting from scratch. They were reconstructing using knowledge that survived the deluge in ways we can't fully trace. The MI central to the flood myths are described as cosmic principles writing law engineering delivered by the Anunnaki. Dr. Amanda Stelza, studying the Epic of Gilgamesh in Chicago in 2020, noted that Utnapishtim, a flood survivor like Zasudra, was granted immortality to preserve these principles. The me weren't abstract virtues, but practical instructions encoded in stories to ensure their survival. One tablet catalogued as BM23 456 describes irrigation techniques with specific measurements for canal depths and water gates, mirroring Enki's instructions in the myths. Stelza in her office saw these stories as a cultural firewall designed to protect technical knowledge through catastrophe. The Sumerians, by embedding the MI in sacred narratives, ensured they would be recited and remembered even if their cities fell. The flood's aftermath in the myths is telling. The Anunnaki express regret, promising never to destroy humanity so completely again. Dr. Chun in 2015 saw this as a policy shift. Not divine remorse, recognition that total erasure cost too much knowledge. The Sumerians who rebuilt after 2900 B.C. seemed to act on this lesson, burying tablets in vaults and building ziggurats to last millennia. Dr. Irving Finkel, studying these tablets in the British Museum in 2018, noted their durability, clay baked to withstand time unlike fragile papyrus. Yet thousands of tablets were lost when libraries at Uruk and Nippur were destroyed or neglected, leaving only fragments of the me. Finkel, holding a shattered tablet, felt a pang of loss. The untranslated texts locked in museum vaults might hold the key to what the Sumerians were trying to save. The connection to Gbsip 6,000 years earlier is haunting. Dated to 9,000 600 B.C. Its buried pillars suggest a culture with advanced knowledge preserved against a similar fear of loss. Dr. Klaus Schmidt, excavating the site in 2019, saw its astronomical alignments and carved symbols as a precursor to Sumer's traditions. The deliberate burial of Gbasip around 8000 B.C. mirrors the Sumerians' buried tablets, as if both cultures knew their knowledge was fragile. Could the flood myths be an echo of an earlier catastrophe? Perhaps the younger Dus with Suma's flood a later reflection of that memory. Schmidt, standing among the pillars, felt a silence that spoke of a truth buried too deep to reach. The global flood stories suggest a universal trauma. From the Epic of Gilgamesh to the Popol Vuh of the Mare, cultures describe a deluge that resets the world with survivors tasked with preserving knowledge. Dr. Collins in 2014 noted that these stories often include sky teachers Anunnaki Quetzalcoatl who deliver the tools to rebuild. The Sumerians, as the first to record these tales in cuneiform, may have preserved the clearest account of a lost civilization. Its knowledge fragmented across the globe. The MI encoded in their myths were the seeds of this reconstruction, guiding the Sumerians to rebuild cities, laws, and star charts from a past they could only dimly recall. As the desert wind fades, the tablets sit in silence, their wedges sharp against the clay. The flood myths are more than stories. They are a warning, a memory of a time when knowledge was nearly lost. The Sumerians rebuilt from those fragments, their cities rising from the silt with a sophistication that suggests a hidden source. The air in the Metropolitan Museum of Art's conservation room is cool and sterile, a stark contrast to the sun-scorched deserts of ancient Mesopotamia, where the artifacts it houses were born. In 2001, Dr. Janet Morrison, a curator with over 2 decades of experience, sat at her workbench, her magnifying glass poised over a small limestone cylinder seal catalogued as VA243. Barely the size of a pencil eraser. This unassuming artifact carved between 500 and 200 B.C. held a scene that made her question everything she knew about ancient astronomy. At its center was a radiant star, unmistakably the sun, surrounded by 11 spherical bodies in what appeared to be orbital positions. The arrangement bore an eerie resemblance to a heliocentric model of the solar system concept not formally proposed until Copernicus in 1543. Nearly 4,000 years later. Was this a coincidence? Or did the Sumerians in their earliest days possess knowledge of the cosmos that defies our understanding of history? Dr. Morrison's discovery was not the first time VA243 had stirred debate. Unearthed in the ruins of Akkad, this cylinder seal was one of thousands used by Mesopotamian officials to press identifying marks into wet clay, authenticating documents and marking ownership. Most seals depicted conventional scenes: gods receiving offerings, kings hunting lions, scribes recording transactions. But VA243 was different. Under magnification, Morrison saw that the central star with its radiating rays was surrounded by spheres varying in size and position, resembling planets orbiting the sun. One sphere, notably larger, could represent Jupiter. Another, tiny and close to the star, suggested Mercury. The clustering of smaller spheres mirrored the inner planets, while others spaced farther out hinted at the outer giants. This was no random design. It looked like a deliberate diagram of the solar system crafted by a culture that, according to mainstream archaeology, believed in a geocentric universe with Earth at the center. The implications were staggering. The Sumerians, living in 2500 B.C., were supposed to view the cosmos as a flat Earth encircled by orbiting stars and planets. A heliocentric model with the sun at the center was unthinkable for a Bronze Age civilization without telescopes or advanced mathematics. Yet VA243's design suggested otherwise. Dr. Morrison, adjusting her magnifying glass, noted the precision of the sphere's arrangement. their sizes roughly proportional to the planets as seen from Earth. The seal's creator had chosen this image to represent their authority, a choice that implied deep significance. Why would an official mark their identity with what appeared to be a cosmic map unless it held a truth they valued above all else? Morrison, staring at the seal's delicate carvings, felt a chill. This was not decoration. It was knowledge encoded in stone by hands that seemed to know more than they should. The academic response was swift and dismissive. Mainstream scholars, including Dr. Irving Finkel at the British Museum, argued that VA 243 was symbolic, not astronomical. The central star, they claimed, represented divine authority, possibly the god Shamash, while the surrounding spheres were decorative elements, perhaps symbolizing stars or attendants mentioned in mythological texts. Any resemblance to the solar system was coincidental, a product of modern imagination projecting order onto ancient art. But Morrison, in her 2001 analysis, found this explanation unsatisfying. The sphere's arrangement was too systematic, their sizes too consistent with planetary proportions to be mere decoration. If a 17th-century European had carved this image, historians would hail it as evidence of early astronomical insight. Why then was VA 243 dismissed as coincidence simply because it was ancient? Morrison began to suspect a double standard in archaeological interpretation where anomalies that challenged established timelines were ignored. The seal's context deepened the mystery. Cylinder seals were not casual art but identity markers pressed into clay to signify ownership or authority. They carried the most important symbols their owners could imagine: gods, kings, or cosmic truths. Dr. Amanda Stelza, studying Mesopotamian art in Chicago in 2020, noted that VA 243's design was unique among thousands of seals. Other seals depicted narrative scenes, but VA 243's focus on a central star and orbiting bodies suggested a cosmological understanding, perhaps inherited from a source lost to history. Stelza, examining high-resolution images, saw details that troubled her. The sphere's positions followed a pattern that mirrored orbital paths with gaps and alignments that hinted at mathematical precision. This wasn't the work of an artist guessing at the sky. It was the product of a mind that understood celestial mechanics. The Sumerians' broader astronomical knowledge supports this interpretation. Their tablets, like the Venus tablet of Ami-Saduqa, tracked Venus's 584-day cycle with data so accurate that modern astronomers use it to date ancient events. Another tablet catalogued as K2669 described Saturn's rings as handles and Jupiter's moons as family members, details barely visible without telescopic aid. Dr. Hermann Hunger, studying these texts in Vienna in 1998, found that Sumerian calculations of the synodic month differed from modern measurements by less than half a second. This precision, achieved with naked eye observation and water clocks, suggested a knowledge base that defied their era's limitations. Hunger, cross-referencing VA 243 with these tablets, wondered if the seal was a visual summary of this knowledge, a shorthand map of the cosmos preserved in limestone. The myths offer a clue to this mystery. The Sumerians described the Anunnaki, those who came down from heaven as teachers who delivered astronomy and mathematics. In the Enuma Elish, the god Marduk establishes the constellations and sets the calendar, while Enki teaches humanity to track celestial bodies. Dr. Sarah Chun, analyzing these myths at Yale in 2015, saw them as encoded instructions, not divine fantasies. The cosmic principles delivered by the Anunnaki included star charts and numerical systems. Chin, in her quiet office, began to suspect that VA 243 was a physical manifestation of these a symbolic representation of knowledge taught by instructors, perhaps an advanced human culture, or, as some speculate, extraterrestrial beings. The seal's heliocentric design, if intentional, suggests a truth the Sumerians preserved but didn't fully understand. The controversial theories of Zecharia Sitchin, though widely debunked, add fuel to this speculation. Sitchin in the 1970s argued that VA-243 depicted the solar system, including a hypothetical planet Nibiru, home to the Anunnaki, while his translations were criticized for inaccuracies. The seal's imagery remains a challenge. Dr. Morrison in 2001 noted that dismissing Sitchin's ideas didn't explain the seal's design. The 11 spheres with their varied sizes and positions align too closely with planetary orbits to be accidental. Could the Sumerians have inherited a model of the solar system from a source that saw beyond the visible planets? The absence of earlier astronomical artifacts, no crude star charts, no primitive diagrams suggest that their knowledge appeared fully formed, as if gifted by teachers who already understood the cosmos. The global parallels amplify the enigma. Other ancient cultures like the Maya and Indians developed sophisticated astronomy often tied to myths of sky teachers. The Mayan Dresden Codex tracks Venus with precision, while the Indian Vedas describe celestial cycles using mathematical systems. Dr. Andrew Collins, studying these parallels in 2014, proposed that a lost civilization might have seeded astronomical knowledge across the globe, with Sumer's cuneiform preserving the clearest record. VA-243 as a visual artifact could be a remnant of this legacy. Its design a snapshot of a cosmic truth shared by distant cultures. Collins, comparing the seal to Mayan star maps, wondered if a single source once connected these peoples. Its memory fragmented by time. The silence of the archaeological record is haunting. Beneath Sumer's cities, there are no precursors to their astronomical knowledge. No early experiments that explain VA-243 sophistication. Dr. John Brennan, excavating at Euro in 2018, described the deepest layers as clean as if swept of evidence. This mirrors the silence at Gabasip, a 9,600 B.C. site with Starin pillars buried deliberately to preserve its knowledge. Could VA-243 be a link to this earlier tradition? Its heliocentric design, a memory of a culture that mapped the heavens before Sumer. Brennan, sifting through the sand, felt as if he stood on the edge of a lost world. Its secrets encoded in a single seal. The wind howls across the desolate plains of southeastern Turkey, stirring dust around the ancient stones of Göbekli, where massive T-shaped pillars stand like silent sentinels of a forgotten age. Across continents and oceans, similar enigmas rise from the Stonehenge. Brooding monoliths in England, the towering pyramids of Giza in Egypt, the submerged terraces of Yonaguni in Japan. These megalithic structures scattered across the globe share an uncanny resemblance. Colossal stones, precise astronomical alignments, and a sophistication that defies the timelines of human history, built thousands of years apart, often by cultures with no apparent contact. They whisper of a shared knowledge, a lost civilization, or perhaps a global network that predates recorded history. In 2019, Dr. Klaus Schmidt stood among the excavated pillars of Göbekli, his final season at a site that rewrote the story of human civilization. Dated to 9,600 BCE, this Turkish complex of T-shaped monoliths, some weighing 20 tons, was built by hunter-gatherers before agriculture or permanent settlements existed. The pillars, carved with intricate animals and humanoid figures, are aligned with celestial events. Sirius's rising, solstices, equinoxes, with a precision that suggests advanced astronomical knowledge. Schmidt, tracing a fox relief under the morning sun, felt a chill. This wasn't a primitive experiment, but a deliberate act of engineering requiring thousands of laborers and decades of planning. How did a pre-agricultural society muster such resources? And why did they pour them into a monument buried deliberately around 8,000 B.C., as if to hide it from time itself? The mystery of Göbekli is not unique. Across the world, Megalithic structures share haunting similarities. Stonehenge, built around 3000 BCE in England, features massive sas arranged in a circle aligned with the solstices. The stones, some weighing 50 tons, were quarried and transported over 150 miles without wheels, a feat that baffles modern engineers. Dr. Mike Parker Pearson, studying Stonehenge in 2015, noted its astronomical precision with sightlines tracking the sun's annual cycle. Like Göbekli, Stonehenge shows no crude precursors, no smaller failed stone circles, suggesting a culture that already knew how to build monuments. Pearson, standing in the Wiltshire fog, wondered if Stonehenge's builders inherited a tradition from an earlier forgotten source. Much like the Sumerians, who emerged millennia later with their star-aligned ziggurats. In Egypt, the Great Pyramid of Giza, dated to 600 BC, stands as another enigma. Its base is aligned within a fraction of a degree to true north, its proportions encoding mathematical constants like pi and the golden ratio. Dr. Robert Schull, a geologist at Boston University in 2015, calculated that the pyramid's construction required moving stones weighing up to 70 tons with a precision that rivals modern machinery. The pyramid's internal chambers align with Orion's belt as it appeared 500 years ago, suggesting a deep understanding of axial precession, of phenomenon requiring centuries of observation. Studying the Giza Plateau saw parallels with Beklit's star-aligned pillars and Suma's ziggurats, as if all three cultures were following a shared architectural blueprint, one that encoded cosmic knowledge in stone. The Yonaguni monument off Japan's coast adds another layer to the puzzle. Discovered in 1986, this submerged structure, dated to around 8000 BCE, features terrace stone platforms and steps that appear man-made. Dr. Masaki Kimura, a marine geologist at the University of the Ryukyus, argued in 2010 that Yonaguni's geometric shapes and alignments suggest a megalithic complex, not a natural formation. Its depth, 80 feet below sea level, places it in a period when rising sea levels flooded coastal settlements after the Younger Dryas. Kimura, diving among the terraces, proposed that Yonani was part of a lost Pacific culture, perhaps linked to Beklit or Sumera by a global tradition of megalithic construction. The absence of artifacts at Yonani, like the silence beneath Suma's cities, suggests a deliberate erasure, as if its builders hid their legacy from history. These structures share a common thread. They appear with a sophistication that defies their supposed developmental stage. Dr. Andrew Collins, studying global megaliths in 2014, proposed that they might be remnants of a lost civilization, a network that connected distant cultures before recorded history. The Sumerians, with their ziggurats and cuneiform, may have been the last to preserve this knowledge, encoding it in myths of the Anunnaki teachers from the sky. The Enuma Elish describes Marduk establishing sacred architecture aligned with the stars, while Enki delivers them principles of construction and astronomy. Dr. Sarah Chun, analyzing these myths at Yale in 2015, saw them as instructions, not allegories, suggesting that the Sumerians inherited a tradition of building starline monuments from a source like Beklit's builders. The astronomical alignments are a key clue. Göbeklit's pillars track Sirius, Stonehenge follows the sun, and Giza's pyramids align with Orion. The Maltese temples, dated to 600 BC, face solstice points with similar precision. Dr. Martin Swatman, studying Besip in 2017, found carvings that may depict a comet impact around 800 BC. During the Younger Dryas, period of climatic upheaval that could have disrupted a global culture. The flood myths of Sumer, describing Zu Sudra preserving knowledge through a deluge, echo this trauma, as do stories of Noah and Manu. Chun, comparing these myths, wondered if they preserved a memory of a lost civilization. Its megaliths, the only surviving evidence of its existence. The engineering of these structures is equally perplexing. Moving and erecting stones weighing tens of tons required advanced knowledge of mechanics and logistics. Dr. John Brennan, excavating at Dnieper in 2018, noted that Suma's ziggurats used base 60 mathematics to calculate load distribution, a technique mirrored in the precise joints of Giza's pyramids and Stonehenge's lintels. The absence of primitive prototypes, no failed pyramids, no crude circles, suggests that these builders were following established methods. Brennan, sifting through Dnieper's sand, felt a silence that spoke of a lost tradition, one that Suma's ziggurats continued. The Sumerians' myths describing the Anunnaki teaching construction hint at this tradition, as if their ziggurats were a reconstruction of an older blueprint. The global distribution of megaliths raises questions of contact. How did cultures separated by oceans share such similar techniques? Dr. Robert Schull in 2015 proposed a maritime network with coastal settlements exchanging knowledge before rising seas submerged them. Yunani underwater, since the Younger Dryas supports this idea, as do submerged sites off India's coast like Dvarka dated to 7000 BC. These sites with their stone structures suggest a global civilization that vanished, leaving only its monuments. The Sumerians, with their cuneiform records, may have preserved the clearest account. Their myths of sky teachers echoing tales of Thoth in Egypt or Quetzalcoatl in Mesoamerica. Shock diving off Yonaguni imagined a lost world connected by ships and stars. Its knowledge encoded in stone. The deliberate preservation of these structures is haunting. Göbek was buried around 8000 BC. Its pillars protected from time. Stonehenge's stones were erected to endure, some still standing after 5,000 years. The pyramids of Giza, built with corrosion-resistant limestone, remain intact. Dr. Amanda Stelza, studying Sumerian ziggurats in Chicago in 2020, saw this as a cultural impulse to safeguard knowledge mirrored in Sumer's buried tablets and myths. The Atrices describe Zasudra preserving the Me through a flood, much like Bakliet's burial preserved its pillars. Stelza, examining a ziggurat model, felt the weight of this effort, civilization that knew its knowledge could be lost and built to prevent it. As the Turkish stars shine above Gbasip, the global megaliths stand in silence. Their stones a testament to a lost world. They are more than relics. They are a message built to outlast empires and floods. The British Museum's archive is shrouded in silence at 3 o'clock in the morning. Its climate-controlled vaults guarding thousands of clay tablets that hold the secrets of ancient Sumer. In 2018, Dr. Irving Finkel, a curator with 40 years of experience deciphering cuneiform, stood among these shelves, his flashlight illuminating fragments of the Royal Library of Ashurbanipal. Each tablet, etched with wedge-shaped marks, was a survivor of a catastrophic fire that consumed Nineveh in 612 B.C. The flames meant to erase the library instead baked the clay, preserving texts like the Epic of Gilgamesh as if in a kiln. But for every tablet that survived, countless others were lost, reduced to ash, scattered by conquest, or abandoned to the desert's embrace. This was no accident, but a recurring pattern of destruction, neglect, and deliberate erasure that haunts the story of human knowledge. Dr. Finkel's hands trembled as he held a photograph of Tablet K 2669, a mathematical text from Ashurbanipal's library that calculated planetary orbits with a precision rivaling modern astronomy. The tablet's survival was a miracle, but its fragmented state told a darker story. When Nineveh fell to the Babylonians and Mes, the Libraria, repository of Sumerian and Akkadian knowledge, was targeted. Its tablets shattered or burned. Finkel estimated that only a fraction of the library's contents survived, with thousands of texts lost forever. Across Mesopotamia, similar losses marked the archaeological record. At Uruk, where cuneiform was born, entire archive buildings were reduced to rubble, their tablets crushed or dissolved by time. At Dnieper, a religious center, administrative libraries were pillaged, their contents scattered. Eridu, The city Sumerians claimed as the first ever built. Storage rooms stood empty, their shelves broken, their knowledge gone. Finkel, in the archive's dim light, felt a quiet rage at the scale of this lesser cultural catastrophe that left only fragments of Sumer's genius. The destruction was not always accidental. Dr. John Brennan, excavating at Euro in 2018, found evidence of deliberate Eresia tablets smashed, archives burned, as if new rulers sought to obliterate the past. When empires fell, their successors often targeted the knowledge of their predecessors, deeming it dangerous or heretical. Religious shifts exacerbated this loss. As new faiths rose, older texts were burned as pagan relics. Dr. Sarah Chun, studying Sumerian myths at Yale in 2015, noted that the transition from Sumerian to Babylonian culture saw the selective copying of texts, with many deemed irrelevant left to decay. Languages too played a role in this erasure. As Sumerian gave way to Akkadian, then Aramaic cuneiform became unreadable, its tablets discarded as worthless clay. Chun, poring over a fragmented hymn, saw this as a kind of cultural Darwinism where only knowledge serving immediate needs survived while deeper wisdom faded into obscurity. The scale of the loss is staggering. Dr. Finkel in 2018 estimated that less than 20% of recovered cuneiform tablets have been fully translated, with tens of thousands languishing in museum vaults worldwide. These untranslated text, astronomical treatises, mathematical commentaries, medical manual hint at a vast body of knowledge that could rewrite our understanding of Sumer. A tablet from Uruk, catalogued as 1/927-16, contains a mathematical table for calculating irrigation volumes, its precision suggesting a mastery of hydraulics. Another from Nippur describes surgical procedures with a detail that rivals later Greek texts. Yet these are mere fragments of a larger archive, most of which was lost to fire, conquest, or neglect. Finkel, holding a shattered tablet, felt the weight of what was missing: explanations for Sumer's sudden sophistication, perhaps even the origins of their knowledge. The Sumerians themselves seemed aware of this fragility. Their myths, like the Atrahasis, describe a flood that nearly erased civilization, with Zu Sudra chosen to preserve them principles of writing, law, and engineering. Dr. Amanda Stelza, studying these myths in Chicago in 2020, saw them as a deliberate strategy to protect knowledge by encoding technical instructions in sacred stories. The Sumerians ensured their transmission through oral recitation even when physicals were destroyed. The Kesh Temple hymn, for instance, details ziggurat construction with measurements that match archaeological remains. Its verses a checklist for builders. Stelza in her office recognized this as a cultural firewall designed to safeguard wisdom against catastrophe. Yet even this strategy failed when libraries burned, leaving only scattered myths to hint at what was lost. The global parallels deepen the tragedy. The Library of Alexandria, repeatedly damaged by political and religious upheaval, lost countless texts from the ancient world. Mayan codes were burned by Spanish conquistadors who deemed them demonic. Buddhist manuscripts vanished during Chinese imperial purges, and Islamic texts were destroyed in Mongol invasions. Dr. Andrew Collins, studying these losses in 2014, saw a pattern. The past becomes dangerous to the present, so the present erases it. Each destruction followed the same dynamic: knowledge that didn't serve immediate power was discarded, its repositories burned or abandoned. Collins, comparing Sumerian losses to these later tragedies, wondered how much of human history was lost to this cycle of fire and forgetting, leaving only fragments like VA-243, a cylinder seal that may depict a heliocentric solar system. The Sumerians took extraordinary measures to prevent this loss. They created redundant copies of their tablets, distributing them across cities like Uruk, Nippur, and Eridu. They buried tablets in vaults beneath ziggurats built to withstand time. Their myths, encoded with technical details, were recited in rituals to ensure their survival. Dr. Margaret Whitney, studying ziggurat remains in 2010, found tablets embedded in the walls. Their cuneiform preserving astronomical data. This wasn't mere record-keeping but a desperate attempt to protect knowledge from oblivion. Yet the destruction was relentless. When Adian rulers conquered Sumer, they prioritized their own archives, leaving Sumerian texts to crumble. Whitney, standing in ruins, felt the silence of those lost Tibble silence that spoke of a civilization's fear realized. The connection to Göbekli 6,000 years earlier is haunting. Dated to 9,600 B.C. Its buried pillars suggest a culture that also feared losing its knowledge, preserving it in stone before vanishing. Dr. Klaus Schmidt, excavating Göbekli in 2019, saw its deliberate burial as a parallel to Sumer's buried tablets. Both acts of defiance against time. Could Göbekli's builders have been the source of Sumer's knowledge? Their legacy passed down through oral traditions until cuneiform captured it. The flood myths describing a deluge that reset civilization might echo this earlier loss, with Sumer's tablets and ziggurats a second attempt to preserve what was nearly forgotten. Schmidt among the pillars felt a silence that whispered of a truth too vast to grasp. The ongoing loss of knowledge is the deepest tragedy. Dr. Finkel in 2018 noted that modern institutions continue this cycle. Museums discard artifacts deemed insignificant. Digital archives delete files to save space. And academic priorities favor incremental research over disruptive discoveries. The untranslated tablets sitting in vaults are ignored not because they lack value, but because they don't fit current narratives. This systematic forgetting driven by bureaucracy and neglect mirrors the ancient fires that consumed Sumer's libraries. Finkel, closing his files, saw the irony. We pride ourselves on preserving knowledge, yet we lose it through choices that prioritize convenience over curiosity. As the museum's vaults grow dark, the tablets sit in silence. Their wedges a testament to a civilization that fought to be remembered. The Sumerians knew their knowledge was fragile. Their libraries one fire away from amnesia. Listeners of Codex of the Lost, let the mystery of this loss carry you into the night. Imagine the scribes, their tablets buried against oblivion, their stories a shield against forgetting. Because in those ancient fragments, a lost world waits, whispering that we may be losing the wisdom we once fought so hard to save. In the dim glow of a Columbia University office at 2 a.m., the hum of a computer screen casts faint light across stacks of notes and cuneiform dictionaries. Professor Elena Kazakova sits hunched over a digital image of a clay tablet, its wedge-shaped marks sharp against the ancient clay. After 15 years deciphering Sumerian texts, she thought she understood the limits of translation. But tonight, a single word Anuna is back at her, defying clarity. Its meaning shifts like sand in the Mesopotamian desert, each interpretation opening a new door to the past while obscuring others. The Sumerian language, dead for millennia, guards its secrets in ambiguity. Its words a puzzle that may hide the truth about humanity's origins. Were the Anunnaki gods, teachers, or something stranger? The translations offer no certainty, only questions that echo through the silence of a lost world. Kazakova's screen displays a tablet from Uruk dated to 3,200 B.C. Its cuneiform describing the Anunnaki as those who came down from heaven. Traditional scholars render anarchy as gods or divine beings, a translation that fits neatly into museum displays and textbooks. But the word's etymology is less certain. Breaking it down, Anu means sky or heaven, and Ki means earth, suggesting offspring of the sky god upon the earth, or even princely seed. Some propose a more literal reading. Those who descended. Kazakova, cross-referencing dictionaries, finds that each translation shifts the narrative. If gods, the Anunnaki are mythological figures. symbols of divine power. If descendants or visitors, they could be memories of real beings, advanced humans, or as some speculate, extraterrestrial instructors. The ambiguity isn't just linguistic. It's a veil over Sumer's history, hiding the truth of who shaped their civilization. The challenge of Sumerian translation lies in its isolation. Unlike Latin or Sanskrit, which left living descendants, Sumerian is a linguistic orphan with no native speakers or oral traditions to clarify its nuances. Its pronunciation is guesswork reconstructed from later Addian borrowings. Its grammar pieced together from fragmented tablets is incomplete. The cultural context, metaphors, shared assumptions vanished with the civilization itself. Dr. Samuel Noah Kramer, a pioneer in Sumerology in 1956, described translation as archaeology of meaning, an attempt to rebuild a worldview from scattered clues. A single tablet from Lagash catalogued as BM23. 456 describes the Anunnaki convening to govern cities. Traditional translations call this a divine council, but alternative readings suggest a historical meeting of leaders with heaven symbolizing authority, not the sky. Kramer in the University of Pennsylvania's archives felt the weight of this uncertainty. Knowing each choice reshaped Sumer's story. The word me compounds the problem. Often translated as divine decrees, could also mean cosmic laws, cultural programs, or technical instructions. In the Enuma Elish, the me are gifts from the Anunnaki encompassing writing, mathematics, and engineering. Dr. Sarah Chun, analyzing this in 2015 at Yale, saw the MI as encoded knowledge blueprints for canals, ziggurats, and laws. But the term's vagueness allows multiple interpretations, whether me spiritual ideals or practical manuals. Chun, poring over translations, noted that choosing decrees frames the Anunnaki as gods, while instructions suggests teachers. This ambiguity cascades through Sumerian texts, turning the same words into evidence for radically different histories, divine myths, or memories of a lost civilization. The Sumerians' own awareness of this ambiguity is evident in their myths. The Atrahasis describes Enki teaching Zeus Sudra to preserve the me through a flood, as if the act of recording was a defense against loss. Dr. Amanda Stelza, studying this myth in Chicago in 2020, saw cuneiform as a deliberate tool for preservation. Its wedges pressed into durable clay to outlast time. Yet the myths don't clarify terms like Anunnaki or me, assuming a shared understanding among their audience. Stelza, examining a tablet's precise wedges, realized that this shared context died with Sumer, leaving modern translators to fill the gaps with educated guesses. The result is a kind of intellectual colonization where contemporary assumptions, religious, rationalist, or speculative, shape the past to fit modern frameworks. Academic pressures exacerbate this ambiguity. Careers and grants depend on definitive interpretations. Yet the evidence resists certainty. Dr. Irving Finkel at the British Museum in 2018 noted that only 20% of cuneiform tablets have been translated, with thousands sitting unread in vaults. A tablet from Nieper catalogued as 1:927-18 describes astronomical observations, but its key terms potentially indicating advanced knowledge are debated. Some scholars see divine metaphors, others see technical descriptions. Finkel, holding a fragmented tablet, felt the frustration of this divide. The pressure to produce clear narratives for museums or journals often leads to conservative translations that avoid disruptive ideas like the Anunnaki as historical figures or the me as technological blueprints. The global parallels deepen the mystery. Myths of sky teachers Thoth in Egypt, Kustalkot in Mesoamai echo the Anunnaki, suggesting a shared memory of knowledge delivered from above. Dr. Andrew Collins, studying these in 2014, proposed that Suma's cuneiform preserved the clearest record of this tradition. But its ambiguity obscures the truth. Egyptian hieroglyphs and Mayan glyphs, while complex, evolved from simpler forms. unlike cuneiform's sudden sophistication. Collins, comparing texts, wondered if a lost civilization seeded these traditions, its legacy muddled by translation. The Sumerians' flood myths describing a deluge that nearly erased the mirror this loss as if they knew their words could be misunderstood by future generations. The silence of untranslated tablets is haunting. Beneath Sumer's cities, no earlier scripts explain cuneiform's origins. Dr. John Brennan, excavating at Eridu in 2018, described the deepest layers as empty, as if swept clean. This mirrors Gbesites' buried pillars dated to 9,600 BCE, which may encode a proto-writing system. Could Suma's cuneiform be a continuation of this tradition? Its ambiguity a result of losing the original context. Brennan, sifting through sand, felt a silence that spoke of a truth erased, perhaps deliberately to hide a past too vast to comprehend. As Kazakova's office grows dark, the tablet's wedges glow on her screen, a reminder that meaning is fragile. The Sumerians wrote for an audience that shared their worldview, not for us. Their words, meant to preserve knowledge, now obscure it, their truths lost in translation. The British Museum's archive is a labyrinth of shadows at midnight. This climate-controlled vaults, a silent sanctuary for the clay tablets of ancient Sumer. In 2015, Dr. Robert Hassan, a junior research fellow, stood among these shelves, his flashlight illuminating a cuneiform tablet catalogued as BM45. 793, dated to 400 B.C. Its wedges recorded planetary orbital periods with a precision that matched modern calculations to decimal points. Hassan's heart raced as he realized this artifact challenged everything he had been taught about ancient astronomy. Yet, when he submitted his findings, the response was a curt dismissal. Interesting, but not worth pursuing. 6 months later, his fellowship was not renewed. The tablet was returned to storage, the secrets left unread, a casualty of an academic silence that seemed to guard the past as much as it explored it. Hassan's experience was not unique. The academic world, with its rigorous methodologies and peer-reviewed journals, prides itself on uncovering the past. Yet, it often buries anomalies that don't fit established narratives. BM45, 793, with its precise astronomical calculations, suggested a level of Sumerian knowledge that defied the Bronze Age's supposed limitations. Hassan, cross-referencing the tablet with modern software in 2015, found its values for Jupiter's orbit accurate within fractions of a second. Such precision implied advanced observational techniques or inherited knowledge. Yet his supervisors deemed it an outlier, likely a scribal error or coincidence. Hassan, now teaching at a small regional university, saw this dismissal as part of a broader pattern. Academia, bound by funding, publication pressures, and institutional biases, often silences discoveries that challenge the status quo. The scale of this silence is staggering. Dr. Irving Finkel, a cuneiform expert at the British Museum, estimated in 2018 that less than 20% of recovered Sumerian tablets have been fully translated. Tens of thousands languish in museum vaults worldwide, catalogued but unread, their wedges holding potential revelations about astronomy, mathematics, or engineering. A tablet from Europe catalogued as 927-18 contains a mathematical treatise with geometric calculations that predate Pythagoras by a millennium. Another from Nieper describes a surgical procedure with uncanny detail. Yet these artifacts remain unstudied not because they lack value but because they don't align with academic priorities. Finkel, sorting through fragments in the museum's dim vaults, felt a quiet frustration. The resources for translation time, money, expertia allocated to projects that reinforce known narratives, leaving anomalies like BM45, 793 to gather dust. This selective focus is driven by institutional realities. Dr. Sarah Chun, studying Sumerian myths at Yale in 2015, noted that grants and tenure depend on producing publishable results within tight timelines. Revolutionary discoveries like evidence of advanced Sumerian astronomy require years of interdisciplinary work, risking careers and funding. Journals favor incremental studies that build on accepted theories, not disruptive claims that demand new paradigms. Chun, analyzing a myth describing the Anunnaki as teachers, proposed that it encoded technical knowledge, but her colleagues urged caution. Such interpretations were too speculative for mainstream publication. The result is a filtering process where only safe research sees the light, while anomalies are sidelined, not censored but quietly ignored. The Sumerians themselves seem to anticipate this loss. Their myths like the Atrahasis describe a flood that nearly erased civilization, with Zu Sudra preserving the MI principles of writing. Law and science through the chaos. Dr. Amanda Stelza, studying these texts in Chicago in 2020, saw this as a deliberate strategy to protect knowledge from catastrophe. The Sumerians buried tablets in vaults beneath ziggurats, encoded instructions in myths, and built durable structures to outlast time. Yet their efforts were only partially successful. When Nineveh fell in 612 B.C., the royal library of Ashurbanipal burned, preserving some tablets by baking them, but destroying others. Stelza, holding a fragmented tablet, saw the irony. The Sumerians feared forgetting, yet their knowledge was lost to fire, conquest, and neglect, losses that modern academia continues through its own selective silence. The global parallels amplify this tragedy. The Library of Alexandria, Mayan codes, and Buddhist manuscripts all fell to deliberate destruction or neglect, their knowledge erased when it no longer served power. Dr. Andrew Collins, studying these losses in 2014, saw a pattern. New regimes, religions, or cultures often target the past, deeming it dangerous or irrelevant. The Sumerians faced this when Adian rulers prioritized their own archives, leaving Sumerian tablets to crumble. Collins, comparing these losses, wondered how much of human history vanished because it didn't fit the needs of the present. The untranslated tablets, like those describing the Anunnaki as teachers, might hold clues to a lost civilization, but their silence reflects academic choices to focus on the familiar rather than the disruptive. The connection to Gbesite, dated to 9,600 B.C., is particularly haunting. Its buried pillars aligned with stars suggest a culture with advanced knowledge preserved against loss. Dr. Klaus Schmidt, excavating the site in 2019, saw its deliberate burial as a parallel to Sumer's buried tablets. Both acts of defiance against oblivion. Could Gobasese builders have been the source of Suma's knowledge? Their legacy passed down through oral traditions until cuneiform captured it. The academic silence surrounding such possibilities, dismissing Göbeklit's sophistication as anomalous mirrors. The dismissal of Sumerian tablets like BM 45, 793. Schmidt, among the pillars, felt a silence that whispered of a truth too vast for current frameworks to contain. This silence is not always intentional concealment but a byproduct of institutional inertia. Dr. John Brennan, studying Sumerian ziggurats in 2018, noted that interdisciplinary research combining archaeology, linguistics, and astronomy could unlock tablets like BM 45, 793. But departmental structures discourage such approaches. Funding goes to specialized projects, not risky ventures that cross boundaries. Brennan, sifting through Nieper's sand, saw untranslated tablets as victims of this system. Their secrets ignored because they don't fit academic silos. The result is a kind of systematic forgetting where knowledge is lost not through fire but through bureaucratic neglect. A modern echo of the ancient destructions that erased Sumer's libraries. The implications are profound. If Suma's knowledge was inherited, as their myths of the Anunnaki suggest, the untranslated tablets could reveal a lost civilization. its wisdom buried in clay. Yet academia's silence risks repeating history's mistakes, prioritizing comfort over curiosity. Dr. www.2222251410. Music Chun in 2015 wondered how many researchers like Hassan abandoned disruptive discoveries for career stability. The tablets sitting in vaults are not hidden. They're ignored. Their potential to rewrite history stifled by a system that rewards conformity. Chin, closing her files, saw the paradox. Modern scholarship, with its advanced tools, could uncover these truths, but only if it dares to ask the questions it's been trained to avoid. As the museum's vaults fade into darkness, the tablets sit in silence, their wedges sharp against the clay. They are a testament to a civilization that fought to be remembered. Yet their secrets remain locked away, victims of a silence that protects as much as it conceals. The Chicago skyline glimmers against the dusk, its steel towers a testament to modern ingenuity. Yet beneath the hum of progress lies a question that echoes through the ages. In the reading room of the Oriental Institute, surrounded by cuneiform tablets from ancient Sumer, Dr. Margaret Chun sits in 2020. Her notes filled with evidence that challenges the story of human civilization. The Sumerians, emerging around 200 B.C., didn't climb slowly from primitive beginnings. They appeared with cities, writing, and mathematics so sophisticated they seemed to belong to a later age. Their myths speak of knowledge delivered by the Anunnaki, not invented, as if they were rebuilding from a lost blueprint. What if civilization is not a linear ascent, but a cycle of recovery, each age reconstructing fragments of a forgotten past? Dr. Chen's desk is strewn with photographs of tablets from Uruk dated to 200 B.C., their wedges recording complex transactions in a script that appeared fully formed. Unlike Egypt's hieroglyphs or China's oracle bones, which show gradual evolution, Suma's cuneiform begins with standardized grammar and vocabulary as if its scribes were following a manual. Chun, tracing the wedges, notes their mathematical tables base 60 calculations that underpin our clocks and GPS executed with a precision that suggests prior mastery. The cities too defy expectation. Euro housing 80,000 people boasted grid-like streets and engineered drainage systems with no crude precursors in the archaeological record. Chin, in the quiet of her office, feels a vertigo. This wasn't a civilization learning to build. It was one reconstructing, as if piecing together a puzzle from a past it could only dimly recall. The Sumerian myths reinforce this idea. The Enuma Elish describes the Anunnaki, those who came down from heaven, delivering the Me principles of writing, law, and engineering. The Atresis tells of Zu Sudra, a flood survivor chosen to preserve these Me through a deluge that reset the world. Dr. Sarah Chin, analyzing these texts in 2015, sees them as more than myths. They're memories of a reconstruction effort, encoding technical knowledge in stories to survive catastrophe. The MI include instructions for canals, ziggurats, and astronomy, suggesting the Sumerians were restoring systems, not inventing them. Chin, cross-referencing tablets, wonders if the Anunnaki were teachers, perhaps an advanced human culture, or as some speculate, extraterrestrial instructors, whose legacy the Sumerians preserved in clay and stone. The archaeological record supports this cycle of recovery. At Sherapak and Kish, silt layers dated to 900 B.C. mark a flood that disrupted sophisticated societies, replacing them with simpler ones. Yet the Sumerians who rebuilt soon after wielded knowledge-based 60 mathematics star-aligned ziggurats that should have taken centuries to rediscover. Dr. John Brennan, excavating at Nippur in 2018, found no developmental phase beneath these cities. No failed experiments or crude tools, the silence in the deepest layers. He noted, felt deliberate, as if the past had been swept clean. Brennan, sifting through sand, began to suspect that Suma was not humanity's first civilization, but its first attempt at rebuilding using fragments of a lost world preserved through myths and buried tablets. Gobasi, dated to 9,600 B.C., offers a haunting parallel. This Turkish site with its T-shaped pillars aligned to Sirius was built by hunter-gatherers before agriculture, its sophistication defying conventional timelines. Dr. Klaus Schmidt excavating in 2019 saw its deliberate burial around 8,000 B.C.E. as an act of preservation mirroring Sumer's buried tablets. The pillars, carvings, animals, humanoid figures, suggest a proto-writing system, perhaps a precursor to cuneiform. Schmidt, standing among the stones, wondered if Bekel's builders were the source of Sumer's knowledge. Their legacy passed through oral traditions until clay could capture it. The flood myths describing a deluge that nearly erased civilization might echo an earlier catastrophe, like the Younger Dus around 10,800 B.C. TE when climatic upheaval submerged coastal cultures. Global parallels deepen the mystery. Egypt's pyramids, Stonehenge, and the Yunani monument share Suma's obsession with astronomical alignments and durable construction. Dr. Andrew Collins, studying these in 2014, proposed a lost civilization that seeded megalithic traditions worldwide. Its knowledge fragmented by floods or conquest. The Sumerians, with their cuneiform, may have preserved the clearest record, their myths of sky teachers Anunnaki Thoth Quetzal cloying a shared memory. Collins, comparing these stories, saw Suma as a reconstruction, its ziggurats and tablets rebuilding a world lost to catastrophe. The absence of precursors at these sites, like Suma's silent layers, suggests a cycle of rise, fall, and recovery, each civilization building on the ruins of the last. The Sumerians' efforts to preserve knowledge reveal their fear of another loss. Their ziggurats, built to last millennia, encoded astronomical data in their proportions. Their tablets, buried in vaults, were crafted to withstand fire and time. Dr. Amanda Stelza, studying the Kesh Temple hymn in 2020, found it described ziggurat construction with precise measurements. A manual disguised as poetry. Yet much was lost. Dr. Irving Finkel in the British Museum in 2018 estimated that 80% of cuneiform tablets remain untranslated, their secrets locked in museum vaults. The destruction of libraries at Uruk and Nippur by conquest or neglect erased countless texts. Finkel, holding a fragmented tablet, felt the tragedy of this loss of civilization that fought to be remembered only to be silenced by time. Modern civilization may be repeating this cycle. Our reliance on complex systems, digital archives, specialized technologies mirrors Sumer's dependence on cuneiform and ziggurats. Dr. Chun in 2020 noted that a single disruption cyber attack climate crisis could erase our knowledge, leaving future generations to rebuild from fragments. The Sumerians' flood myths warning of a deluge that nearly erased the me feel like a cautionary tale for today. Chun, closing her files, wondered what we are rebuilding and what we are losing in our confidence that progress is permanent. The untranslated tablets, the buried pillars of Beklit, suggest that we stand on the ruins of a past we don't fully understand, reconstructing a world we may have already lost. As Chicago's lights fade, the tablets sit in silence. Their wedges are testament to a civilization that knew its fragility. Suma's story is not one of invention, but recovery, a cycle of rebuilding from fragments of a forgotten age. The desert sun beats down on the ruins of where the crumbled ziggurat stands as a silent testament to Sumer's vanished glory. Beneath these sands, clay tablets etched with cuneiform whisper of technologies so advanced they blur the line between engineering and enchantment. The Sumerians, emerging around 3,200 B.C., described their knowledge as gifts from the Anunnaki, beings who came down from heaven to teach irrigation, metallurgy, and astronomy. but buried within their myths are hints of devices and techniques that seem impossible for a Bronze Age culture systems that powered their cities, aligned their temples with the stars, and perhaps even harnessed energies we've yet to rediscover. Were these the products of human ingenuity, or were they relics of a technology mistaken for magic? In 2018, Dr. Amanda Stelza sat in her Chicago office surrounded by translations of Sumerian texts that describe the Medivine principles delivered by the Anunnaki. One tablet catalogued as BM23. For 56 music detailed the construction of irrigation canals specifying precise angles for water flow and materials for durable gates. Another from Europe described smelting bronze with a recipe that balanced copper and tin to achieve strength unmatched until modern metallurgy. Stelza, poring over these texts, noticed a peculiar phrase. The me were often called powers or forces, as if they were not just knowledge but tools or devices. In the Enki and the world order, Enki bestows a me for moving water, described with terms suggesting a mechanical system, not a simple ditch. Stelza's pulse quickened. Could these myths conceal descriptions of machines, their technical details cloaked in the language of magic to ensure their preservation? The ziggurats themselves hint at advanced technology. Dr. Margaret Whitney, studying UR's ziggurat in 2010, found its mud brick layers mixed with straw in ratios that maximize stability, a technique requiring chemical knowledge. The structure's alignment with Sirius and its proportions encoding base 60 mathematics suggest a purpose beyond worship, perhaps as an observatory or even an energy device. Some fringe researchers, like those inspired by Zecharia Sitchin in the 1970s, proposed that ziggurats were power stations channeling cosmic or terrestrial forces. While mainstream scholars dismiss this as fantasy, Whitney noted that the ziggurat's precise construction withstanding millennia of earthquakes implies an engineering prowess that feels almost otherworldly. Standing on weathered platform, she wondered if the Sumerians were using techniques taught by instructors who understood forces we've yet to name. The Baghdad Battery, discovered in Iraq in 1936, fuels this speculation. This clay jar, dated to the Parthian period, but possibly rooted in Sumerian traditions, contains a copper cylinder and iron rod surrounded by an electrolytic substance. Dr. John Brennan, examining replicas in 2018, noted that it could generate a small electric current, suggesting knowledge of electrochemistry. Mainstream scholars argue it was a ritual object, but its design mirrors batteries used in early 20th century experiments. Could the Sumerians or their predecessors have harnessed electricity for plating metals or healing, as some myths suggest? The Atrahasis describes Enki using sparks of life to animate clay, a phrase that to Brennan hints at a technology mistaken for divine power. Global parallels deepen the mystery. In Egypt, the Dendera reliefs dated to 50 B.C. depict what some call a light bulb, a bulb-like object with a filament connected to a power source. Dr. Andrew Collins, studying these in 2014, noted their resemblance to Sumerian descriptions of glowing orbs held by the Anunnaki in cylinder seals like VA-243. In India, the Vedas describe Manas, flying machines powered by mysterious energies. The Mayan Pop Vu mentions devices that see the stars, suggesting optical tools. Collins, comparing these accounts, proposed a lost technological tradition shared across ancient cultures, with Sumer's cuneiform preserving its clearest record. The MI described as forces or devices might refer to machines, their details encoded in myths to survive catastrophe. The flood myths like the Atrahasis provide context. They describe a deluge around 900 B.C. that nearly erased civilization, with Zu-Sudra preserving the me to rebuild. Archaeological silk layers at Shuruppak confirm this disruption. Yet the Sumerians who followed wielded advanced knowledge-based 60 mathematics star-aligned ziggurats that suggests continuity, not reinvention. Dr. Sarah Chun, analyzing these myths at Yale in 2015, saw the MI as technical manuals, not divine decrees, designed to guide reconstruction. The The Sumerians' obsession with burying tablets and building durable ziggurats mirrors this effort as if they feared another loss. Chun in her quiet office wondered if they were safeguarding a technology from a civilization that vanished. Its machines mistaken for magic by those who inherited them. Galip dated to 9,600 B.C. offers a haunting link. Its T-shaped pillars aligned with Sirius suggest a culture with advanced knowledge buried deliberately to preserve it. Dr. Klaus Schmidt excavating in 2019 saw parallels with Suma's ziggurats both built to encode cosmic data. Could Gope's builders have used mechanical systems? Their techniques passed down until Suma's cuneiform captured them. The absence of precursors at both sites. No crude tools or failed structures implies a lost technological tradition. Its artifacts erased or misinterpreted. Schmidt among the pillars felt a silence that whispered of machines we've learned to call myths. The loss of Sumerian knowledge underscores this tragedy. Dr. Irving Finkel in the British Museum in 2018 noted that 80% of cuneiform tablets remain untranslated. Their descriptions of me locked in vaults. Libraries at Uruk and Nippur were burned or abandoned. Their technologies lost to conquest or neglect. Finkel, holding a fragmented tablet, felt the weight of this losser civilization that hid its machines in stories only to see them fade. As the desert stars shine above Earth, the ziggurats stand silent, their bricks perhaps concealing devices we've yet to understand. The twilight settles over the Mesopotamian desert where the ruins of Suma's cities Uruk Eridu Nip stand as silent witnesses to a civilization that seemed to spring from nowhere around 3,200 B.C. Their ziggurats aligned with stars and their cuneiform tablets etched with tales of the Anunnaki hint at a knowledge far beyond their time. But what if Suma was not an isolated marvel, but part of a vast ancient network that connected distant cultures across oceans and continents? From the carved pillars of Göbekli in Turkey to the submerged terraces of Yunnan in Japan. From Egypt's pyramids to the Indus Valley cities. Striking similarities in myths, symbols, and technologies suggest a global exchange predating recorded history. Could these ancient societies have shared a communication network? A web of knowledge that linked humanity in a forgotten golden age. In 2014, Dr. Andrew Collins stood on the windswept hill of Gbasip, his eyes tracing the T-shaped pillars dated to 9,600 B.C. These stones carved with animals and aligned with Sirius suggested a pre-agricultural culture with advanced astronomical knowledge. Collins, a comparative archaeologist, noted eerie parallels with Sumer ziggurats, built 6,000 years later, which also tracked celestial events. Both cultures shared symbol spirals. Snakes, the tree of life that appear in distant sites like Stonehenge dated to 3000 B.C., and the Indus Valley seals from 2,600 B.C. Collins, in his London study, proposed a radical idea. These similarities were no coincidence but evidence of a global network. A system of exchange that carried knowledge across continents long before modern trade routes. The Sumerians, with their cuneiform, may have preserved the clearest record of this network. Their myths of sky teachers hinting at a shared origin. The flood myths offer a key clue. Suma's Atrahasis describing Zu Sudra surviving a deluge to preserve the principles of civilization mirrors stories worldwide. Noah in the Bible, Manu in India, and the Mayan Popol Vuh doctor. Sarah Chun, analyzing these in 2015 at Yale, noted their shared structure. A catastrophic flood, a chosen survivor, and knowledge delivered by divine teachers. Archaeological evidence supports a flood around 2,900 B.C. in Mesopotamia with silt layers at Shur Park and Kish. But older disruptions like the Younger Dryas around 10,800 B.C. suggest a global catastrophe with rising seas submerging coastal settlements. Chin, poring over texts, wondered if these myths preserved a memory of a connected world. its knowledge fragmented by floods and passed down through stories. The Yunani monument off Japan's coast deepens the mystery. Dated to 8000 B.C. Its terrace stone platforms submerged by rising seas resemble man-made structures. Dr. Masaki Kimura, diving in 2010, argued that Yonaguni was a megalithic complex, possibly part of a Pacific culture linked to Sumer. Its geometric shapes echo the precision of Göbeklit's pillars and Egypt's pyramids aligned with Orion. Kimura, among the underwater terraces, saw evidence of a maritime network with coastal societies exchanging knowledge before floods erased them. Suma's myths of the Anunnaki delivering irrigation and astronomy might reflect this network's legacy. Their cuneiform capturing what others preserved orally, symbols like the spiral and tree of life appear across these cultures, suggesting shared communication. Indus Valley seals dated to 2600 B.C. depict trees and serpents, motifs found in Sumerian art and Basip's carvings. Egyptian reliefs show the Ankh, a life symbol akin to Suma's tree. Dr. John Brennan, studying Sumerian seals in 2018, noted that cylinder seal VA243 with its possible heliocentric design shares geometric patterns with Mayan glyphs. These symbols, Brennan argued, could be a universal code, a visual language used by a global network to transmit knowledge. The absence of written records before cuneiform suggests this network relied on oral and visual exchange, with Sumer as its final archive. The engineering similarities are striking. Göbek's 20-ton pillars, Stonehenge's 50-ton SARS, and Giza's 70-ton blocks required advanced logistics with no crude precursors. Dr. Robert Shaw, studying Giza in 2015, proposed that these feats suggest a shared technological tradition possibly spread by seafaring cultures before the Younger Dryas floods. Suma's ziggurats using base 60 mathematics for stability echo this precision. Shaw on the Giza Plateau imagined a network of builders. Their methods passed through generations until Sumer recorded them. The Enuma Elish describing Anunnaki teaching construction might preserve this tradition. This may be a blueprint for a lost world. The loss of this network's traces is the deepest tragedy. Dr. Irving Finkel in the British Museum in 2018 noted that 80% of Sumerian tablets remain untranslated. Their potential clues to global connections locked in vaults. Libraries at Uruk and Nippur were burned or abandoned, their knowledge lost to conquest. Submerged sites like Yonaguni and Dvarka off India suggest coastal archives drowned by rising seas. Finkel, holding a fragmented tablet, felt the weight of this losser network that once linked humanity, now reduced to scattered stones and stories. The Sumerians, with their buried tablets and durable ziggurats, fought to preserve this legacy. But time and catastrophe prevailed. As the stars gleam above Uruk's ruins, the echoes of a global network linger in Sumer's myths and megaliths worldwide. The Sumerians may have been the last to record a connected world. Their cuneiform, a final archive of a lost age. Listeners of Codex of the Lost, let this mystery carry you into the night. Imagine ancient travelers, their ships and stories linking distant lands. Their knowledge aflame we're still trying to rekindle. Because in those silent ruins, a forgotten network waits, whispering that we may be rebuilding a world once united by stars and stone. The desert night falls over the ruins of Uro, where the crumbled ziggurat stands silent under a sky that once guided Sumerian scribes. 5,000 years ago, this land birthed humanity's first cities. Their clay tablets and starline temples preserving a knowledge so advanced it seems to belong to another age. The Sumerians, emerging around 3200 B.C., spoke of the Anunnaki, teachers from the heavens, and a flood that nearly erased their world. Their myths, etched in ununiform, warn of a civilization's fragility, of knowledge lost to fire, conquest, and forgetting, as modern cities hum with technologue satellites guided by Sumerian mathematics. Our clocks ticking to their base 60th haunting question lingers. Are we in our confidence repeating the same cycle of rise and fall that silenced Sumer? In 2020, Dr. Margaret Chun sat in the reading room of Chicago's Oriental Institute, surrounded by tablets that told of Sumer's sudden rise and gradual fade. The Atrahasis, one of the oldest myths, describes a deluge around 2900 B.C. that nearly obliterated humanity, with Zu-Sudra chosen to preserve them principles of writing, law, and engineering. Archaeological silt layers at Shuruppak and Kish confirm this flood, marking a disruption where complex cities gave way to simpler settlements. Yet the Sumerians who rebuilt wielded knowledge cuneiform base 60 mathematics star-aligned ziggurats that should have taken centuries to rediscover. Chun, tracing the wedges of a tablet, felt a chill. Suma's story was not one of invention but recovery, a civilization piecing together fragments of a lost world. Their obsessive preservation bringing tablets encoding knowledge in myth suggests they feared another collapse. A fear that resonates in our own age of fragile systems. The Sumerians' warning lies in their legacy of loss. Dr. Irving Finkel in the British Museum in 2018 estimated that 80% of cuneiform tablets remain untranslated, their secrets locked in vaults. Libraries at Uruk and Nippur were burned or abandoned. Their knowledge of astronomy, medicine, and engineering reduced to fragments. The Enuma Elish describes the Anunnaki delivering the me. But many of these principles were lost when empires fell. Finkel, holding a shattered tablet, saw a pattern. Knowledge is not eternal, but vulnerable to conquest, neglect, and deliberate erasure. The Sumerians built ziggurats to last millennia, buried tablets to withstand floods. Yet their efforts failed against time's relentless march. Finkel wondered if our digital archives, dependent on fragile technology, face a similar modern flood of data loss or systemic failure. Global parallels amplify this warning. The Library of Alexandria, Mayan codices, and Buddhist manuscripts all fell to fire or neglect, their wisdom erased when it no longer served power. Dr. Andrew Collins, studying these losses in 2014, saw a cycle. Civilizations rise, amass knowledge, then collapse, leaving fragments for the next to rebuild. Sumer's flood myths, echoed in stories of Noah and Mayu, suggest a universal memory of such a collapse, perhaps tied to the younger Dryas around 10,800 B.C., when floods submerged coastal cultures. Collins, comparing these myths, proposed that Sumer was a reconstruction, its knowledge inherited from a lost civilization like Baklit, whose star-aligned pillars buried around 8,000 B.C. mirror Suma's preservation instinct. The silence beneath both sites, no crude precursors, no failed experiment hints at a forgotten source. Its legacy scattered across the globe. Modern civilization mirrors Suma's vulnerabilities. Our reliance on digital systems, cloud storage, and specialized expertise parallels Suma's dependence on cuneiform and scribes. Dr. Sarah Chun in 2015 at Yale noted that a single cyber attack or environmental crisis could erase our digital archives, leaving future generations to rebuild from scraps. The Sumerians' me preserved in myths and clay survived because they were redundant and durable. Our data stored in servers vulnerable to power outages or obsolescence lacks such resilience. Chun, closing her files, saw the irony. We congratulate ourselves on progress, yet we risk a collapse as devastating as Sumer's. Our knowledge as fleeting as theirs if we don't heed their warning. The Sumerians' foresight is their final lesson. They encoded technical knowledge, irrigation, astronomy, loin, myths like Enki and Ninmah, ensuring it could be recited through catastrophe. Their ziggurats aligned with stars were built to endure their proportions, a stone archive of cosmic data. Dr. Amanda Stelza, studying the Kesh Temple hymn in Chicago in 2020, found it described ziggurat construction with precise measurements. A manual for rebuilding. Yet, Most tablets were lost, and their myths' meanings faded in translation. Stelza, examining a tablet's wedges, felt the weight of this loss of civilization that planned for eternity, only to be silenced by time. Our own systems, from AI to satellites, face similar risks. Their complexity, a strength, and a weakness, dependent on infrastructures we barely understand. As Chicago's lights dim, Sumer's ruins whisper a warning. Civilizations are fragile, their knowledge of flame easily extinguished. The untranslated tablets, the buried pillars of Beklit, suggest we stand on the ruins of a past we don't fully grasp. Rebuilding with fragments we may misinterpret. The desert winds howl over the ruins of Euro, where the ghosts of Sumer whisper a truth that shakes the foundations of everything we've been taught. 5,000 years ago, a civilization rose from the sands, not with the clumsy steps of beginners, but with the confident stride of those rebuilding a lost world. Their cities like Ur and Eridu emerged fully formed grids of streets, engineered canals, and ziggurats aligned with stars. Their cuneiform script etched in clay captured a language too perfect for a first attempt. Their base 60 mathematics still ticking in our clocks mapped the cosmos with a precision that defies their tools. And their myths pulsing with tales of the Anunnakos who came down from heaven speak not of gods but of teachers perhaps from beyond the stars who gifted humanity the blueprint for civilization. Welcome listeners of Codex of the Lost to the electrifying climax of our journey where Mr. H unveils the heart of this enigma. What if Sumer wasn't the dawn of civilization, but a desperate attempt to recover a truth we've been programmed to forget? Imagine a world where history isn't a straight line, but a cycle of rise, fall, and recovery. A world where Sumer was not the first, but a flicker of memory from a golden age drowned by floods or erased by fire. The evidence screams from the sands. Gobises buried pillars 11,000 years old aligned with Sirius before agriculture began. The cylinder seal VA243 carving a heliocentric solar system 4,000 years before Copernicus. The MI. Those cosmic principles encoded in myths as manuals for rebuilding canals, laws, and star charts. These are not the relics of a primitive past, but the fragments of a civilization so advanced it makes our skyscrapers seem like child's play. Yet the silence is deafening. 80% of Sumerian tablets lie untranslated in museum vaults, their secrets locked away by an academic world that fears what they might reveal. The Anunnaki, the flood, the ziggurats, they all point to a truth we've been trained to dismiss. Humanity's story may be a sequel, a reconstruction of a world we lost long ago. This isn't just history, it's a wake-up call. A jolt to your soul that demands you question the sanitized narrative fed to us by textbooks and gatekeepers. The Sumerians knew their knowledge was fragile, burying tablets and building stone libraries to outlast catastrophe. They feared a second collapse, and their myths scream a warning. Civilizations die when they forget. Today, we stand on the edge of our own abyss digital archives, vulnerable to a single blackout. Technology so complex we barely understand them. A world teetering on the brink of chaos. Are we repeating Sumer's fate? Building towers of glass while ignoring the lessons carved in clay. The truth is out there, buried in the sands, locked in untranslated wedges, waiting for us to dare to look. Every untranslated tablet, every dismissed anomaly like VA243 is a piece of a puzzle that could rewrite who we are. This is no bedtime story. It's a call to arms for your mind. A challenge to peel back the veil and claim the truth that's been stolen from us. Feel the weight of this moment. Listeners, your heart races because you sense it. Something bigger, something hidden, something that could change everything. Sumer's warning is for us. A cry from the past that says, Don't let this knowledge slip away again. You're not just a listener. You're a seeker, a torchbearer in a world that's forgotten how to question. So, let's ignite a firestorm of curiosity together. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think the Anunnaki really were? Have you stumbled across a piece of history that doesn't add up? Share your stories, your doute, your revelation. Let's build a community that refuses to accept the official script. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to join the Codex of the Lost Family, where we dive deeper into the shadows every week. Spread this video across social media, forums, anywhere truth seekers gather. Let's wake the world to Suma's secrets. And tell me, what's the next mystery you want us to unravel? Could it be the submerged cities of Yunani hinting at a Pacific Atlantis, or the Vedic tales of flying Vimana sprue of ancient tech or extraterrestrial contact? Leave your vote below and let's keep this fire burning. The stars above Suma still shine, watching us as they watched Zusudra, daring us to remember. Don't let their warning fade. Question everything. Seek the truth and join us in the next chapter of this cosmic quest. This is Mr. H signing off from Codex of the Lost, urging you to keep your eyes on the